Chapter 181, Chapter 180. Beru told Suho about Sung Ilhwan's past while they were on the move. Sung Ilhwan, Suho's grandfather and the father of the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo. He was once a top-rank hunter who had accepted the power of the rulers. His exact rank was unknown because it was before a clear hunter ranking system was established. However, Beru said he was definitely S-rank. After all, he was capable of accepting the power of the rulers into his body. And it's highly likely that your grandfather has awakened as a hunter once again, just like before. There was no age limit for hunter awakening. A suitable constitution for mana was innate. It was a matter of talent. That's why all the former hunters they had met so far had awakened with the same powers in this era. So Sung Ilhwan would probably be no exception. However, there was one thing. Regardless of talent, the timing of awakening varied from person to person. Some had a trigger, while others awakened suddenly without any specific reason. It's possible he hasn't awakened yet. That's even more worrying. Indeed, Suho had never heard any major news about his grandfather. If Grandpa became a hunter, he would have wanted to be a firefighter again, or maybe he'd start a guild with a similar purpose. Considering Sung Ilhwan's personality, it was highly likely that he hadn't awakened yet, and that made Suho even more anxious. A perfect target for the apostles of Itarim, a suitable vessel that didn't have any power to defend himself. He gritted his teeth and sped down the highway, his silver hair fluttering in the strong wind, going even faster than Baek Miho, who had carried him on her back during the Lee Min-sung incident. Suho had already summoned Gray, and his strength stat had increased tremendously compared to back then. What's that? Dangerous. Someone call the association. Countless drivers were shocked and terrified at the sight of Suho. Some even took out their phones to report him to the police or the Hunter Association, but he ignored them all and ran as fast as he could. As a result, he arrived in Yangpyeong in the blink of an eye. Trickle. The sound of flowing river water and a thick fog gently obscured his vision. The Namhan River divided Yangpyeong, Gyeonggi Province, in two, and in the areas near the streams that merged with it, fog like this often formed. Paldang Dam, in particular, currently held a large amount of water and was nearly overflowing, so the fog was even thicker. Huh? Suho, running through the thick haze, suddenly felt a strange sensation he couldn't describe. It seemed like his sense stat, which had increased significantly due to his level-ups, was activated, but it felt a little different than usual. What is it? Suho narrowed his eyes and expanded his senses, observing the surroundings, but it was strange. He couldn't sense any hostility or presence of magical beasts nearby. What could it be? From the moment he set foot in Yangpyeong, an inexplicable unease kept nagging at his senses. Beru understood. They didn't need any more words. Beru immediately twitched his antennae and began to scan the surroundings. Meanwhile, Suho took out his phone and called his grandfather again. He had already tried calling him as well as his grandmother before leaving, but no one answered. However, this wasn't unusual. They were living a leisurely life in the countryside, so they didn't always carry their phones with them. They're still not answering. Suho frowned as he listened to the endless ringing. Don't you know their address? Well, Suho shook his head, slightly embarrassed at Beru's question. For the past 5 years, I haven't been in my right mind. To be honest, anyone would have been the same. Both of his parents suddenly disappeared overnight. How many people could stay sane in that situation? It was overwhelming. Suho smiled bitterly, recalling how he felt back then. Now he knew the whole story, but at the time, he truly felt like the sky was falling. And he realized how weak and insignificant he truly was. My parents disappeared, and there was absolutely nothing I, a mere high school student, could do. What did I do back then? Right, first, I reported them missing to the police. I contacted my relatives to let them know the situation. And then I watched from the side as the adults who rushed over had serious discussions with the officials. I sat blankly at home, waiting and waiting for my parents to contact me. I never let go of my phone, even for a second, just in case they suddenly called. That was the best he could do. Then my uncle came to me and said this. Suho, leave this to the adults and focus on your studies as usual. That's what your parents would truly want. and Suho had no choice but to follow his words. His uncle, Yoo Jin-ho, was a well-known conglomerate leader in Korea. If someone like him was doing everything in his power to find his missing parents, there was nothing more a high school student like him could do. So he went back to school. But you know what? Suho, recalling those unpleasant memories, asked Beru with a somewhat complicated expression. What do you think my grandfather was doing despite that tense situation? He continued without waiting for Beru's response. Strangely enough, Grandpa was putting out fires as usual. Even though his own son was missing, he was saving other people. Beru's eyes momentarily widened in surprise. They're still not answering. This won't do. I need to ask my uncle. Unable to reach his grandparents, Suho immediately called his uncle, but Yoo Jin-ho was unavailable due to work, so as a second option, he tried contacting his aunt. Oh my, Suho? Thankfully, she answered her phone. Aunt, could you tell me Grandpa's address? Huh? Why all of a sudden? Surprise was evident in the voice of Suho's aunt, Sung Jinwoo, coming from the other end of the line. Well, this reaction was natural. As he had just told Beru, his relationship with his grandfather had become a bit distant since that time. Suho forced a bitter smile and chose his words carefully. I just wanted to see him again, after such a long time. Oh, that's great. I'll send you the address right away. Oh wait, why don't you come with me? Huh? No, there's no need to. No, I was planning to visit anyway. Suho declined immediately, worried that his aunt might get involved in something dangerous, but she was quite persistent. Her determination to mend the relationship between him and his grandfather was clear. How about this? I'll be off work soon, so come straight to Ajin Hospital. At those words, Suho paused and his expression hardened. Ajin Hospital? His reaction surprised his aunt even more. Oh my, didn't you call knowing that? I opened a hospital in Yangpyeong. What? You really didn't know? He realized once again how carefree he had been living his life. Suho rushed to Ajin Hospital, located in Yangpyeong. Suho. Sung Jinwoo, wearing a white doctor's coat, greeted him warmly. How did you get here so fast after hanging up? Were you nearby? His aunt and the younger sister of the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, was a doctor. And of all places, she had opened a hospital in Yangpyeong. Ajin Hospital wasn't a massive facility, but it was famous for its impressive capabilities despite its size. Looking at the name, Suho asked Sung Jinwoo, Aunt, is this place perhaps? Yes, you're right. This hospital was built by a foundation sponsored by Ajin Soft. In other words, it was practically a hospital established by Sung Jinwoo's husband, Yoo Jin-ho's company. Saying this, she gave a bitter smile. So there's been a bit of gossip about it. What kind of gossip? As you might have seen on your way here, there are many wealthy people living in Yangpyeong. To be precise, it's mostly retired wealthy people. Ah, Suho understood. He had seen many on his way here, but there were indeed many luxurious-looking villas scattered around the area. From this perspective, it was easy to see why people would gossip about a large corporation like Ajin Soft building a medical facility for the rich. But in reality, the order was reversed. Sung Jinwoo said, sounding a bit wronged, I don't know if you're aware, but this area is moderately far and moderately close to Gangnam, making it the perfect location to retire and build a villa. That's why I recommended this place when your grandparents said they wanted to move to the countryside. As Sung Jinwoo said, Yangpyeong was generally considered a good place for the capital's residents to retire and enjoy a leisurely life surrounded by wilderness. It offered healing and relaxation in nature, yet it wasn't too far from Seoul, making it convenient for their children to visit. There's a saying, sleep in Yangpyeong but live in Seoul. But after I helped them settle here, I started to worry. There were hardly any big hospitals around. Even when enjoying life in a countryside villa surrounded by nature, the most important thing for the elderly was whether there were medical facilities nearby. Realizing this, Sung Jinwoo made up her mind. She would build a hospital near her parents, so only when I opened a hospital here, people started flocking to this area. So, have you made up with Grandpa? We never fought in the first place. That's good. You made the right decision. But our dad, your grandpa, has always been cool-headed. You know, when your dad suddenly ran away from home for 2 years in middle school? I heard about it from Grandpa. Sung Jinwoo's words brought back memories of her grandfather talking about it. Your dad has always been good at disappearing suddenly. He'll come back this time too, just like before, so don't worry too much. That's not comforting at all. That was the start of Suho's strained relationship with his grandfather. We're here. It's really close to the hospital, right? Before they knew it, the rice paddies cultivated by his grandparents stretched out before them. Suho immediately expanded his senses. Chapter 182, Chapter 181. Sung Ilwan's house was quite modest compared to the other villas in Yangpyeong. A small field and a greenhouse were surrounding it. The house is a bit small, isn't it? I suggested building it bigger, but your grandfather insisted that a larger house would only be harder to clean. Suho ignored Sung Jinwoo's words and focused solely on his senses. His expression was serious. There's no presence. He swept through the greenhouse and fields surrounding the house, but he couldn't detect any humans other than them. Beru. Whoosh! At Suho's thought, a shadow quickly separated from his own and started to scan the surroundings. Oh my, are they out again? Sung Jinwoo tilted her head, puzzled that no one answered the doorbell, no matter how many times she pressed it. But they often went out for farming and other errands, so she wasn't too worried. They were also quite healthy for their age. Anyway, I've never seen them stay home quietly. I even opened a hospital, but they've never come in sick. Of course, that's a good thing, but... Sung Jinwoo chuckled and entered the door code she had memorized for such occasions. Beep, beep, beep. Click. Suho, go in first and wait. But as the front door opened and the interior of the house came into view, they stopped, expressions hardening simultaneously. What the? Suddenly, their hearts sank. The empty air, the scattered belongings, the house, always neatly organized whenever they visited, now felt unfamiliar. Mom? A chill ran down Sung Jinwoo's spine, and countless ominous thoughts flashed through her mind. Mom, are you home? Her face rapidly paled, and she frantically searched every corner of the house for her parents. On the other hand, Suho's eyes searched for something else. He knew from the beginning that there was no one inside. So what he needed to find was... the phone. He took out his phone again and called his grandfather. Then, he heard a phone ringing from a corner of the living room. His grandfather's phone, plugged into the charger, was ringing all alone. Sung Jinwoo turned pale upon seeing this. No, where did Dad go, leaving his phone behind? Then, where's Mom's phone? This time, they called Suho's grandmother, Park Kyung-hye. Fortunately or unfortunately, her phone was nowhere to be found in the house. It seems Mom took her phone with her, but how urgently did they leave to make the house look like this? But the anxiety remained. Little Monarch, I checked the garage, and the car is still there. Beru, who had been checking the surroundings, whispered. At his words, Suho immediately went outside to check the garage. Hey, where are you going? Sung Jinwoo followed Suho and widened her eyes upon seeing the truck neatly parked in the garage. Why is the car here? They didn't even take the car? Sung Jinwoo's expression became even more serious. Sung Il-won's house was surrounded by vast fields, making it difficult to go anywhere without a car. Suho looked down at his feet with a grim expression and said, Arsha. Yes, Suho. Arsha's reply came immediately from the shadow dungeon. Are there any of your worker bees in Yangpyeong? This is my first visit to Yangpyeong, so there aren't many, but there are many farms nearby, so I can increase their numbers as much as you want. Start right away. Yes, understood. Buzz. Suddenly, the sound of bees flapping their wings could be heard from all directions. Arsha first used a doppelganger to check the picture frames hanging in the house. After carefully examining the faces of Suho's grandfather and grandmother, she dispersed her scouts in all directions. The bees in Yangpyeong began to transform into Arsha's worker bees one by one. But Suho couldn't be relieved just yet. Even if it were just his elderly grandparents suddenly becoming unreachable, it was still a serious situation. But what if the Itarim were involved? Come out, Gray. Whoosh! A small wolf appeared from Suho's shadow. Sung Jinwoo was momentarily startled, but quickly calmed down, remembering that her husband had told her about Suho's awakening. In fact, seeing Gray gave her a good idea. That's right, there's the Hunter Association. Fortunately, there was a Hunter Association branch not far from here, and it had recently established a cooperative relationship with Ajin Hospital, the best hospital in Yangpyeong. Suho, I know someone at the association. I'll ask them for help. Gray, find anything you can. And Rakan, are you listening? Suho decided to use every means at his disposal. King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs is watching you. He felt Rakan's gaze, and looking in the direction of his presence, Suho spoke. You understand the situation, right? Can you use your ability to smell mana or something to figure out what happened here? It would be much more efficient to directly utilize the dead monarch than Gray. A dark smile appeared on Rakan's lips as he realized Suho's intention. King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs proposes a deal in exchange for his help. What is it this time? As expected, the dead monarchs never offered help without conditions. King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs explains that he needs a sacrifice to exert his influence. That was true. Ordinarily, a dead monarch couldn't exert any influence on the real world, but there was one way to make it possible, a ritual where sacrifices were offered and prayers were made. Understanding the situation, Suho nodded in agreement. After all, Rakan's previous request was merely to hand over useless items to Gray. All right, what do you want? We don't have much time, so speak quickly. King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs grins, saying it won't be a bad deal for you either. At that moment, Rakan's presence began to grow stronger. And then, Suho, she's at the association right now. His head snapped towards Sung Jinwoo, who was on the phone with a serious expression. What? Grandma is? Yes, an employee personally drove her there. King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs lets out a soft sigh. Rakan's growing presence suddenly diminished, but Suho's attention was already far from him. Why would Grandma go to the Hunter Association? Then what about Grandpa? Is he there too? No, she went there because of that. Huh? At Suho's question, Sung Jinwoo answered with a tearful voice. It's because my dad, your grandpa. Suho's expression hardened at Sung Jinwoo's following words, and he shouted, Gray! Growl! At the stern command, Gray, who had been sniffing around, puffed up his body. Get on! Suho had Sung Jinwoo ride on Gray's back, and immediately started running towards the Yangpyeong branch of the Hunter Association where his grandmother was. Min Dae-seok, the branch manager of the Hunter Association's Yangpyeong branch, was a man full of complaints. They call it a transfer, but it's practically a demotion. Like any other country, the Hunter Association had branches all over Korea, and the work of the association employees varied greatly depending on the characteristics of their jurisdiction. Of course, the most basic tasks were similar. Maintaining public order while hunter guilds raided dungeons, and constantly searching the area for any abnormalities, as gates could appear anytime, anywhere. But there was one problem here. What if, no matter how hard they searched, dungeons rarely appeared in their jurisdiction? Would the citizens be happy, feeling safe and secure? There were all sorts of people in the world, and sometimes there were those who loathed such peace and tranquility. Why do I have to waste my youth in this countryside? Why am I stuck here? Here we go again. Look away. Don't make eye contact, or he'll pick on you like last time. Branch manager. Min Dae-seok frequently threw tantrums due to the lack of work. His subordinates' way of coping was simply to ignore him as best they could. But the biggest problem that made them sigh was that he wasn't complaining because there was actually no work. No work, my foot. We keep getting complaints. It's because he pushes all the minor incidents to the police station, saying they're not our jurisdiction. The employees, well aware of branch manager's usual work style, could only sigh quietly. But then again, it wasn't entirely fair to blame Min Dae-seok. The Hunter Association had only been around for 2 years. The distinction between the police's duties and the association's duties in handling incidents was still blurry. It was a matter of interpretation, but even when dealing with such a superior, someone had to eventually gather their courage. Excuse me, branch manager. Miss Park Kyung-hae is waiting outside. What? Why is that old lady here again? Tell her to go to the police station. Min Dae-seok, who had been yawning lazily, glared at the news. The employee, expecting this reaction, stammered. No, we brought her here this time. We investigated, and it seems Sung Il-hwan is indeed missing. That's all the more reason she should go to the police station. Sigh. All right. So, When and where did the old man disappear? The employee couldn't help but sigh inwardly at Min Dae-seok's words. If we knew that, it wouldn't be a missing person case. If we knew that, it wouldn't be a missing person case. Huh? The employee was startled by the sudden cold voice, wondering if they had accidentally spoken their thoughts out loud. But thankfully, it wasn't them. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Suddenly, an overwhelming presence pressed down on the air from behind the employee. There stood Suho, radiating a chilling aura that shook the entire association building. Skill, bloodlust activated. Skill, bloodlust activated. Branch manager Min Dae-seok, directly exposed to the terrifying bloodlust, turned pale and shouted, "Ho! Ga!" At that moment, his body stiffened and began to float in midair. Suho walked towards him with a chilling expression and checked the name tag hanging around his neck. He also found the other necklace he was wearing. A branch manager, huh? Shiver. Why did that simple phrase send chills down their spines? The sudden and terrifying scene made the association employees simultaneously draw upon their mana. A villain! A villain has invaded. Chapter 183. Chapter 182. Crack. Shatter. As if an earthquake had struck, all the surrounding windows and fluorescent lights exploded simultaneously. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The scene was pure chaos. The overwhelming pressure, threatening to crush the building at any moment, made it difficult for the Hunter Association staff to even breathe properly. Attack! A few hunters who managed to withstand the bloodlust hesitantly drew their weapons and charged at Suho. But, thud, growl, a giant wolf suddenly appeared, blocking their path and roaring fiercely. Grrr! Gray uses skill Contempt for the Weak. Effect activated. All stats of the targets are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. The hunters were terrified by the appearance of the giant wolf filling the room, and they realized, with this level of force, it was definitely a deliberate attack, a meticulously planned terrorist attack targeting the association. The shocking reality only added to their confusion. No, what kind of crazy villain would attack the Hunter Association? Even the infamous Hwang Dong-soo wouldn't do something this insane. What do they want? Why? Why? They didn't know. They had absolutely no idea. No one could think rationally in this situation. Only some were able to desperately suppress their rising fear and blindly charge towards the villain. Bang! Cough! But as soon as they charged, they were struck by the giant wolf's front paw and flung backward. The sight of their colleagues helplessly crashing into the wall completely demoralized the rest of Association's staff. We're going to die. They sensed it. Inescapable death had arrived before them. Kag! At that moment, branch manager Min Dae-seok, who was floating in front of Suho, mustered all his mana in a desperate attempt to resist the overwhelming bloodlust pressing down on him. He gritted his teeth, his body trembling, and glared. You think you can get away with this? Suddenly, as Suho reached out his hand, Min Dae-seok's body flew towards him, seeming to be sucked in. While the deadly grip approached, as if to crush his neck, the branch manager finally closed his eyes tightly. Snap! But what Suho's hand tore off wasn't a part of his throat, but the necklace hanging around it. I'll ask you a question. Min Dae-seok shuddered in fear as the demonic voice pierced his ears, and the fierce gaze was now forever imprinted in his memory. You answer. Suho held up the necklace he had taken from him and asked, Where did you get this stardust necklace? A stardust necklace. Why would a human, the branch manager of the association, have an item that was highly likely to be related to the Itarim? All sorts of imaginations ran wild in Suho's mind. What was the relationship between the foreign religion and the association? And did Chairman Woo Jinchul, who was once a colleague of his father, know about this? But then, at Suho's question, Min Dae-seok closed his eyes tightly and shouted, I bought it! Bought it, Suho tilted his head. Min Dae-seok, startled by his terrifying appearance, hurriedly corrected himself. I'm sorry. Actually, I received it for free. For free? I'm truly sorry. I insisted on paying, but the president forced it into my hands. He went even further, his cowardly gaze shifting to his subordinates scattered around. And I wasn't the only one. All the other employees, too. That rat! How dare he, a supposed superior, drag his subordinates into this? Min Dae-seok's sudden revelation caused his subordinates' expressions to change drastically. They hurriedly covered or tore off the stardust necklaces they were wearing. But Suho's face, upon seeing this, the stoic expression he had maintained until now, cracked slightly. He asked again, "Which president are you talking about?" "Huh?" Sensing the strange atmosphere, Min Dae-suk cautiously gauged Suho's reaction with a servile expression and asked, "Are you perhaps from the Merchants Association? We received the stardust necklaces as a sponsorship from there." Phew. Flinch, Min Dae-suk trembled even at that small sigh. Then, at Suho's hand downwards motion, his body floated in the air again and was unceremoniously dropped onto a nearby chair. Roll. The chair's wheels turned on their own, and Min Dae-suk, still in a seated position, returned to his original spot. Puzzled expressions appeared on the faces of the association employees who witnessed this, a suffocating silence. In an atmosphere so tense that they could barely breathe, all eyes instinctively followed the intruder's every move. In the midst of it all, Suho slowly walked towards branch manager Min Dae-suk's desk and plopped down on the chair opposite him. Then, looking at the trembling man, he boldly stated his purpose for coming here. "Are you the branch manager? I'm here to file a complaint." What? At that moment, everyone's breath was simultaneously released, as if by magic. All the bloodlust that had been pressing down on the area vanished without a trace. But Min Dae-suk could only wear a bewildered expression. A complaint? What do you mean all of a sudden? It seems my grandfather has gone missing. Do you know anything about it? Finally, Min Dae-suk's frozen mind started to work again, and as he recalled the situation before this crazy villain appeared, he came to an even crazier conclusion. "Excuse me, are you perhaps Mr. Sung Il-won's grandson?" "Yes, I'm Sung Suho, the president of the Woojin Guild." "Then you're not a villain." "A villain? I'm a villain hunter officially certified by the association." "What?" Suho confidently presented his business card along with his villain hunter license. Woof! The giant wolf's body shrank as if by magic, and it sat down proudly at Suho's feet, its nose held high. Min Dae-suk's mind was in turmoil as he witnessed the whole scene. Everyone, including the employees, sitting around with dumbfounded expressions. So in other words, to sum it up, he caused all this ruckus just to file a complaint. Of course, no one was brave enough to utter such thoughts out loud. But noticing the gazes focused on him, Suho apologized with a serious expression. "I'm sorry, I tend to get a bit sensitive when it comes to the disappearances of my family." "Oh, no. It's all right. Anyone would be like that if their loved ones went missing." Branch manager Min Dae-suk's voice trailed off as he waved his hands in a flustered manner. The association's office was a complete mess. All the windows were shattered, and the fluorescent lights dangled from the ceiling, flickering ominously. It was hard to empathize with Suho's apology when the scene behind him was so disastrous. And he claims he's not a villain after causing all this. Realizing that the other party wasn't a villain, Min Dae-suk felt a surge of anger rising within him. Now that the situation had calmed down, he was suddenly embarrassed by his pathetic display in front of his subordinates. "All right, I understand you're a hunter with great power, but Korea is a country ruled by law. How dare a young whippersnapper like you cause such a scene just because you are powerful? Do you think you can mess with the association?" Min Dae-suk clenched his fists and glared at Suho. "President of the Woojin Guild, my foot. I'll make sure you're labeled a villain." As a branch manager of the association, he had enough authority to make that happen. But as his eyes met Suho's, Min Dae-suk's stubborn expression softened in an instant. Ahem, I expect you to compensate for the damaged equipment." "Of course, thank you." When Park Kyung-hae and Sung Jinwoo entered the association office, the chaotic scene had already been cleaned up. A few fluorescent lights were still broken, but under them, Suho was listening to his grandmother and aunt explaining what had happened. First I want to apologize. The reason we rejected Miss Park Kyung-hae's complaint for the past few days was because we judged that Mr. Sung Il-won wasn't missing." Min Dae-suk explained to Suho in a defensive tone. "Based on the information his subordinates had gathered, we heard that your grandfather, Mr. Sung Il-won, enjoys fishing as a hobby, and he prefers doing it alone, sometimes going for 2 or 3 days at a time. That's true." Park Kyung-hae nodded readily. Yangpyeong, where the Namhan River and Bukhan River split, had many secluded fishing spots. Thanks to that, Sung Il-hwan could easily indulge in his hobby after moving to Yangpyeong. But this time, something felt different. What was different? His expression. Miss Park Kyung-hye, such abstract observations don't help the investigation at all. Dealing with the elderly was always frustrating. Min Dae-suk sighed inwardly. But seeing Suho sitting right next to him, he couldn't help but manage his emotions. So, what kind of expression did your husband have? My husband has only had that expression 3 times in his life. When was that? The first time was when our son ran away from home. Suho stiffened at those words. When he was in middle school, he suddenly left a note saying he had something to do and ran away, for 2 whole years. Park Kyung-hye said, recalling the past with a bitter expression. I was so shocked that I was about to rush to the police station, but my husband stopped me. Park Kyung-hye still couldn't understand her husband's lack of panic, even though their son was missing. At first, she was angry, then frustrated. What parent could remain calm when their child suddenly runs away? Unlike his wife, Sung Il-hwan was incredibly composed, but it was hard for Park Kyung-hye to blame her husband for being cold-hearted, because his expression at the time seemed like he was desperately holding back his emotions, on the verge of bursting into tears. In the end, she went to the police station and filed a missing person report. But even then, Sung Il-hwan didn't make any effort to find his son. He even stopped me from going out and putting up missing person flyers, saying, "Let's trust our son." Recalling her husband's expression as he said those words, Park Kyung-hye continued, "Eventually, our son returned home safely 2 years later. And then as an adult, he disappeared again 5 years ago. This time, alongside his wife. And my husband calmed me down with the same expression again. He said we should trust our son this time too." Park Kyung-hye's words continued. When he left a few days ago, he had that same expression again. Hearing those words, Suho was almost certain. Beru, maybe Grandpa. Yes, it seems his memories have returned a long time ago. Chapter 184, Chapter 183. When exactly did Sung Il-hwan regain his memories from the past? Low for sure. But one thing was certain. The memories of a monarch transcend time. Suho understood what Beru was trying to say. The cup of reincarnation, the divine tool that turns back time, the cup of reincarnation, has no effect on the consciousness of higher beings like rulers or monarchs. Beru recalled an old memory, a few decades ago, a time when all wars had ended and peace had come to Earth. The moment when Woo Jin-chul, who had been living as an ordinary policeman, not having any memories from his past life, suddenly regained all of them. In retrospect, the trigger was simple, reuniting with Sung Jinwoo. That was all. But in reality, it was anything but ordinary. Who was Sung Jinwoo? The Shadow Monarch, the king who ruled over death, who had killed all other monarchs and brought the entire dimension to its knees. What significance could an event directly involving such a great and noble higher being have on a person's life? Could such an event be dismissed as ordinary? Moreover, Sung Il-hwan is the father who lived with the monarch for half his life and even experienced receiving the ruler's power directly into his body. In other words, a son with the power of a monarch and a father who had the power of a ruler. The two had lived together under one roof for decades. Yu Jinho had regained all his memories just by touching the key to the shadow dungeon, so what about Sung Il-hwan? So, you're saying that as long as something triggers him, it wouldn't be strange if his memories returned at any moment. Suho nodded in agreement with Beru's words. In any case, the conclusion was that his grandfather had disappeared somewhere with his memories from his past life. Then where did he go, and for what purpose? Many questions floated in Suho's mind. But he decided to focus on the most important part for now. The Itarim. To what extent were they involved in his grandfather's disappearance, and was he safe? Let's focus on that. His grandfather might be in a similar situation to his mother, so finding him as soon as possible was the top priority, no matter what. Suho asked branch manager Min Dae-suk, who was talking with Park Kyung-hye and Sung Jinwoo. So, who was the last person to see my grandfather? Suho's grandmother had rushed here after receiving a call from an association's employee today. Until then, the association had been dismissing Sung Il-won's disappearance, but today they finally confirmed that he was indeed missing. We're not entirely sure yet. It was a new female employee who had personally brought Park Kyung-hae here that answered Suho's question. She glanced at branch manager Min Dae-seok and then spoke. Someone said they saw Mr. Sung Il-won walking in a direction other than the fishing spot. Another place? Where is it? Near the Merchants Association. What? At those words, branch manager Min Dae-seok looked visibly flustered and turned to the female employee. Then, he quietly scolded her in a low voice. Why is the Merchants Association coming up here? Are you sure about what you're saying? Can you take responsibility for those words? No. I just heard that someone saw him walking in that direction. You know, branch manager, people don't fish there these days. Of course. That place is ahem. Feeling the gazes of Suho's family, Min Dae-seok coughed and closed his mouth. But it was too late to take back what had already been said. The Merchants Association. Shiver. Min Dae-seok gulped, as he slowly turned his head and saw that Suho's aura was becoming increasingly murderous, just like when he first barged in. He fiddled with the stardust necklace he had snatched from Min Dae-seok's neck and asked, I think you said you received this necklace from the Merchants Association. His words were becoming shorter again. Does he have anger issues or something? Min Dae-seok felt like crying at the volatile atmosphere Suho was once again emitting, looking ready to erupt at any moment. Answer. Yes. The Merchants Association is just a group formed by the merchants in Yangpyeong. It's like any other local association. And, actually, there's a separate Yangpyeong Merchants Association. The Merchants Association we're talking about is more like a private group of hunters active in Yangpyeong. They're the ones making and distributing the stardust necklaces. Min Dae-seok reflexively spilled all the information. Suho felt a strange sensation at his words. Why would hunters create a merchants association instead of a guild? For what reason? No one here would be unaware that it was much more profitable to enter a dungeon once than to waste time on such useless endeavors. Of course, there were cases where guilds engaged in business, but that was merely a supplementary activity. Under Suho's cold gaze, Min Dae-seok fidgeted, not knowing what to do. Then, he noticed the other employees avoiding his gaze and the stardust necklaces hanging around their necks. There's something going on, Suho intuitively realized. Crack! The corner of branch manager Min Dae-seok's desk, gripped in Suho's hand, crumbled loudly. Beru whispered in Suho's ear like a devil. Should I just kill him? I'll eat his brain and read his memories. Did he hear the whisper? Or did Beru's sincerity get through to him? The moment his desk was shattered, branch manager Min Dae-seok flinched and finally spoke. It's the black market. Hick! He blurted out and quickly covered his mouth. The black market? As Suho's gaze grew even colder, Min Dae-seok's face turned pale, and he hurriedly started making excuses. That is, to be clear, I have nothing to do with it. I only heard they were preparing it, so I don't know the details. What is this black market you're talking about? Sung Jinwoo, who had been listening to the conversation, asked, and Min Dae-seok sighed deeply and explained. Well, non-awakened people wouldn't know. It is a direct transaction marketplace used only by hunters. A market? Yes. To be precise, it's a place where transactions or auctions are held for tax evasion. Tax evasion. Sung Jinwoo immediately understood. Even hunters with superhuman abilities feared taxes. Especially for hunters classified as high-income earners, the tax rate was a whopping 50%. Half of the money they earned risking their lives fighting magic beasts was taken away by the government. Of course, it was used to rebuild the cities destroyed by dungeon breaks and to help the citizens affected by them. And the organization responsible for managing and supervising the proper use of those taxes was the Hunter Association. But the association is turning a blind eye to a black market used for tax evasion? No, it was already going on before I came here, and I opposed it at first. Crumble. At that moment, Min Dae-seok's desk started being crushed like tofu, slowly, very, very slowly disintegrating right in front of him. Crack! 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 Gasp! Witnessing the scene, the branch manager held his breath, feeling like he would soon meet the same fate, and he wasn't the only one feeling that way. Suho stood up and swept his cold gaze across all the association employees in the office. Those wearing stardust necklaces, just like Min-dae-sok, trembled with pale faces. Chairman Woo Jin-chul would deal with the legal issues concerning them later. So Suho asked, "Where is this merchants' association?" Yangpyeong was vast, almost as big as Jeju Island. However, unlike it, Yangpyeong had many development restrictions, such as water source protection zones and natural conservation areas. It was surrounded by mountains, forests, and valleys, with countless fishing spots. But the terrain was also quite jagged, making it a region where missing persons cases like Sung Jinwoo's frequently occurred. The fog is thick. Yangpyeong is a humid area. It's because of the many dams. Kui appeared and started sharing woe, had he knew in response to Suho's mumbling. "Little monarch, I understand now." Beru finally realized what the suspicion he had when he first set foot in Yangpyeong was about. It seems the blue mist is mixed within this fog. So there is a dungeon hidden in here too? Yes. Perhaps the association didn't notice it because the blue mist hasn't seeped outside the fog. Kui, a former villain and vice president of the Reaper Guild, recognized the value of this place at a glance. If I knew about a place like this, I would have wanted to create a black market here too, a place where even the existence of a gate could be concealed. It meant that anything could be hidden there. Kui, do me a favor and hit your head. Thud. As expected of a former villain, Kui deeply empathized with the criminal's mindset. I'm starting to get the picture. Suho stopped walking. The mana of the gate, faintly felt within the fog, was starting to grow stronger. It seems like this entire area is a field-type dungeon. Esil, walking beside him, also scanned the surroundings with her eyes gleaming, and she finally found something. There is a totem of the demon race here. Do you know what purpose it serves? It's like a detection system that alerts them when beings other than demons approach. Beings other than demons? Suho smiled faintly at those words. Then I just need to become a demon. Suho took out the item crow mask from his inventory and concealed his face, as it was something worn by the demons working in the Stardust factory. But of course, this alone wasn't enough to fool the barrier. Esil. Got it. Item Vulcan's horn equipped. They were in perfect sync now. Esil immediately turned into spirit form and attached Vulcan's horn to Suho's head, a crow mask and demon horns. Suho's appearance was now undeniably demonic. This should be enough. Listening to Esil's whisper, Suho confidently passed through the barrier. At that moment, his vision changed, and the black market the branch manager had mentioned unfolded before his eyes. Chapter 185, Chapter 184, a picturesque landscape. That was Suho's first impression of the path leading to the black market, a deep valley in the mountains, shrouded in thick fog. As he followed the winding trail upwards, a massive structure gradually revealed its outline before Suho, and finally its true form emerged. A temple. There was no other way to describe it. The towering ceiling, the rough yet intricately decorated stone pillars, the massive bronze door standing at its center. The overwhelming sacred atmosphere instinctively made him realize that this place, regardless of who it was for, was a temple. Flinch. Suddenly, Beru's eyes sharpened, focusing on the front. Little monarch, I sense many presences deep within that building. Humans, or magical beasts? At Suho's question, Beru twitched his antennae and answered confidently. Humans with mana. Most of them seem to be hunters. Demons. I sense some demons too, but not many, and there's no one right beyond the door. Just as the branch manager said. Suho nodded and cautiously walked towards the temple. He raised his head and looked up at the massive, tightly closed entrance. It was a heavy gate that ordinary people would never be able to open. Of course, with Suho's monstrous strength stat, he could not only open it, but also smash it to pieces in one blow. But that would defeat the purpose of sneaking in. It wasn't a good idea to cause a commotion when he didn't even know if his grandfather was inside this building. Besides, Suho already knew how to open this door. Click. He took out the stardust necklace he had taken from branch manager Min-dae-sok out of his pocket, and he put it around his neck, reached out, gently pushing the tightly closed gate. Creak. Surprisingly, the heavy door began to slide open with ease, revealing the spacious interior. It was damp with moss growing here and there on the floor, walls, and ceiling. Suho stepped onto the corridor, following the torches hanging on the walls, and let out a hollow laugh. It was true. To think the real purpose of the Stardust necklace was a pass to the black market. Currently, the public believed that the Stardust necklaces were created for commemorative purposes. It was a meaningful and noble cause to honor the souls of the victims who died to become Stardust ingredients. Moreover, most of the proceeds from the Stardust necklaces were actually being used for the bereaved families, so no one doubted the intentions. But it was all a smokescreen. According to branch manager Min Dae-sok, only a small number of hunters realized the truth. In the first place, the black market hadn't been around for long, so very few people even knew of its existence. But it was only a matter of time. Even if you share information about the black market with a few trusted people, they'll still spread it by word of mouth. Once more people learned about the black market, hunters would naturally seek out the Stardust necklaces. Quay poked his head out, looking intrigued. The more he learned about the black market, the more fascinating it became. It's like a method you'd see in a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. Ponzi schemes, commonly known as pyramid schemes, often use this method to increase the number of their victims. They started with only a few people and then lured others in, pretending to introduce them to something good. Some of them were even suspiciously religious. However, as long as there was no direct harm to him, Suho didn't really care about such things. But what if that religion was the Outer Gods cult? Anyway, the thing is clear. If this was truly a temple of the Outer Gods, it seemed the apostles of Itarim had already perfectly adapted to Earth. After walking along the corridor for a while, a vast dome-shaped space opened up before Suho. It seemed even bigger than several Olympic stadiums combined. However, he couldn't help but be surprised by the sight that unfolded within. He had expected a dark and secretive place, befitting a black market, but it was surprisingly bright and lively. 200 kilos of magic stones. Negotiable. We have all kinds of dungeon ores except for the ones we don't have. Magical beast carcasses on sale today. Discounted price for the last person. Massive sale. The owner has gone crazy. Payment with magic stones is also possible for those without cash. Hey, are you new here? What idiot uses a credit card in the black market? It felt like he was at an expo. The vast space was filled with countless mats and booths, and numerous merchants occupied each spot, passionately hawking their wares and engaging in transactions. Suho couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. It's like a bazaar. They said it was a black market created for tax evasion, yet it felt more like a second-hand items exchange. But there was also an unexpected sight. Little Monarch, it seems there's even a blacksmith who refines ores and makes weapons here. Indeed, and most of the blacksmiths are demons. Surprisingly, humans and demons coexisted naturally in this place. While the people who came and went engaging in bartering were mostly hunters, those who had settled here and were making and selling goods were demons wearing crow masks. In other words, they were the organizers, the staff. A market where humans and demons coexist. It's truly bizarre. Master, I see an auction house and a gambling den over there. Looking in the direction Quay pointed, Suho finally started to see the true nature of the black market. Just one more time. Lend me some more money. I'll pay you back when I win. Hunters who seemed to have lost all their possessions at the gambling den were desperately begging. When they finally started emitting mana from their bodies, the crow-masked demons guarding the gambling den stepped in and grabbed their shoulders. Calm down, members. You can't do this here. Don't make us resort to expulsion. Just one more time. Please, just lend me one more time. Sigh. There's no helping it. If you insist, why don't you participate in a few rounds yourself? What? Don't worry, I'll make sure you're matched with someone of your level. The gambler's eyes wavered at the demon's suggestion. They still couldn't take their eyes off the gambling den, filled with lingering regret. And in the end, they made a decision they shouldn't have. You'll really match me with someone of my level, right? Of course. You know, right? The underground arena is all about bare-knuckle fighting. No items allowed. What's there to worry about for a strong person like you? Then, can I get an advance payment? The moment those words left their mouths, Suho saw it, the demons' grins stretching wide behind their crow masks. They smiled brightly and shook hands with the suckers, or rather, the hunters. Of course, let's discuss the contract details over there. Suho silently watched the gamblers following the demons in a line. An underground fighting ring, it's literally a contract with the devil. Little monarch, you understand, right? Gambling is the path to ruin. Huh? Where are you going? They said it's an underground fighting ring. It's okay to just watch, right? As Suho walked towards the gambling den, the demon guards at the entrance bowed politely and spoke to him. You seem new here. Are you visiting from another factory? Their eyes glanced up at the pair of horns on Suho's head, and a hint of wariness could be felt in their gaze. Answer them informally. They're being cautious because of Vulcan's horn, thinking you're a higher-ranking demon. Suho nodded briefly at Ezel's timely advice and opened his mouth. I heard the rumors and dropped by. Any problem with that? As he subtly showed the stardust necklace hanging around his neck, the demon guards quickly stepped back and replied in a rather friendly manner. Oh, no problem at all. We always welcome new factories. If you need any guidance, would you like us to assist you? Interesting. Suho felt like the demons were salespeople eager to land a new Klee, and they didn't seem to be hiding their intentions at all. But, if you don't mind, could you tell us how much stardust you have? As they asked, their snake-like gazes scanned Suho, who had come empty-handed. As you know, there are many factories that have gone bankrupt these days. While Suho was choosing his words, Ezel whispered in a displeased tone. Honestly, how dare these lowly beings speak like that to a demon with horns? Hey, why are you getting angry? I'm not even a real demon. It seemed this place operated outside of the demon hierarchy. So when Suho remained silent for a moment, the guards dared to smirk, as if they had expected this. Ah, I see. So that's how it is. I knew it from the moment you came empty-handed. These days, many penniless demons come to us wanting to join our side. At that moment, a bundle of stardust suddenly appeared in Suho's hand, which had been empty just a moment ago. The guard's eyes widened in surprise. No, it wasn't just one bundle. 2 bundles, 3 bundles, 4 bundles. Suho had been storing all the stardust he had acquired from raiding the demon factories in his inventory. He took out a bunch and showed it to the demons, a sly smile appearing on his lips. Do I need more? That's enough. This way, please. We'll guide you to the VIP room. Lead the way. Yes. The demon guards immediately lowered their stance and guided Suho to the gambling den. He followed them, his eyes gleaming sharply. A VIP room. Demons are living quite human-like lives. Chapter 186, Chapter 185. Suho, guided by the demons, entered the black market's gambling den. As he had heard outside, the gambling here wasn't about playing cards or poker. Ka! Die! Die! In the vast underground fighting ring, filled with the stench of blood and sweat, 2 hunters, stripped of all their equipment, were engaged in a fierce battle. Their eyes filled with venom, their expressions twisted in rage. It was obvious what was happening. Hey, doesn't it look exciting? They're all humans fighting to pay off their gambling debts. At the words of the demon guard who was guiding Suho, Esil's cynical voice could be heard. Low-ranked demons. Now that the nobles, who held absolute authority, were gone, it seemed the low-ranked demons scattered around were all eager to imitate them. At least the ones in the demon realm made demons fight each other. Here, they're making humans fight, and just watching. A cold glint flashed in Suho's eyes for a moment. He was well aware of the Colosseum duels, a cultural practice of the demon nobles. He had even participated as a demon gladiator himself. But somehow, he found himself in the opposite position this time. A short while later, they arrived at a terrace-like area overlooking the underground fighting ring. This is the VIP room. Humans can't enter this space, so you can watch comfortably. If you want to participate in the games, feel free to call us anytime. I will. Suho sat on the plush sofa and leisurely looked around. A few demons were already in the VIP room, watching the underground fights. They all looked similar, with crow masks concealing their faces and stardust necklaces around their necks. But from the moment he entered the luxurious lounge, their attention shifted from the underground fights to him. Ooh, a new face, a new guest? Those horns are truly magnificent. Horns. Their interest was solely focused on the Vulcan's horns protruding from Suho's head. Curious gazes. servile gazes mixed with fear, and even gazes filled with awe beyond fear. Their complex emotions toward Suho were blatantly evident from behind their crow masks. But no one dared to approach and speak to him first. That's a natural reaction, Asil explained. The Vulcan's horns you have now are completely different from when you were a gladiator. Originally, Vulcan was so incompetent that he couldn't produce bloodstone, the exclusive food of the demon nobles. Therefore, he was the demon who had devoured the most of his own kind, more than any other noble. He was so obsessed with devouring the souls of others that he couldn't control himself, even after being reduced to just horns. So, although Suho, a human, couldn't see it, the other demons could. The sinister and greedy aura emanating from Vulcan's horns, which had feasted on the souls of countless demons. Horrifying. Just how many of his own kind did he have to devour to emit such a presence? Surely he didn't eat all the demons in his own factory, did he? Even though they didn't say it out loud, the thoughts of the demons in the VIP room upon seeing Suho were mostly similar. But then, Suho suddenly clicked his tongue, snapping them out of their trance. The spectacle is down there. Flinch. The demons, startled by his words, quickly averted their gazes from Suho with embarrassed expressions. But not everyone. Oh, I apologize if I offended you. Everyone was just excited. You see, this place is also for making new friends. A demon suddenly approached Suho and spoke to him in a friendly manner. He looked similar to the others, but upon closer inspection, there was one difference. He doesn't have a necklace. Could he be the organizer of this place? Suho and Asil quickly exchanged thoughts. Meanwhile, the demon who had approached him smiled awkwardly and spoke again. Haha, you're a man of few words. Then allow me to introduce myself first. I'm Lotto, the one in charge of running this gambling den. That's not a demonic name. Either he doesn't have a name, or it's a made-up alias. Listening to Asil's explanation, Suho pondered for a moment. What should I do? This demon named Lotto was directly asking for his identity, but since the other party was also using an alias, he could just give any random name. That, however, wouldn't get him anywhere. If he kept avoiding the question, he would only waste time. My name is... Finally, Suho opened his mouth. Vulcan. At that moment, all the demons in the VIP room widened their eyes and stared at Suho in shock. Suho? Even Asil called out to him in a clearly flustered voice. It seems you've chosen a rather dangerous alias. An alias, you say? Suho grinned, as if he had just heard something amusing, and looked directly into Lotto's eyes, whose expression, friendly until now, stiffened. Suho chuckled and countered with a question. Why would I need to use an alias? It's said that there are no demon nobles left in this world. That may be true for others. Are you saying that you, Vulcan, are? Lotto's eyes grew colder as he exchanged brief words with Suho. Similarly, an immense bloodlust from the other demons also focused on him. But Suho had faced too many powerful opponents to be intimidated by such trivial aura. Instead, he crossed his legs in a more relaxed posture and leaned back on the sofa. Then, he casually raised a hand towards the demon guard standing nearby and called out to the real demon noble inwardly. Asil, can you make a bloodstone? I don't know what you're thinking, but Vulcan... All right, I understand. She readily complied with his request, even not fully understanding his intentions. After all, if things went south, they could always smash everything and run or fight their way out. Gasp! Suddenly, following Suho's touch, black blood started to be forcibly extracted from the demon guard's body. Everyone who witnessed this scene couldn't help but stand up in shock. The freshly extracted blood began to gather and solidify into a black bloodstone on Suho's hand. Bloodstone? It's a bloodstone! Oh my god, is he a real demon noble? At that moment, Suho unleashed his own bloodlust with perfect timing. Skill Bloodlust activated. As Suho's intimidating aura filled the entire gambling den, beyond just the VIP room, the demons instinctively crouched down or retreated. The bloodstone that appeared before their eyes and the overwhelming bloodlust that far surpassed their own. The combination of these two made even Lotto, who had confidently approached Suho, turn pale. This can't be. Could he be the real Vulcan? But he looks different. Possessing a human. Good reactions. Suho and Asil conversed inwardly, listening to the hushed murmurs from all around. What are you really up to? What do you mean? I'm just showing off what a real noble is in front of those who are merely playing the noble game. You know, Vulcan couldn't create bloodstone. They'll know that too. Exactly. That's why it's meaningful. Suho smiled faintly and withdrew the bloodlust he had emitted. Then he turned his gaze back to Lotto and asked, "How about it? Is this convincing enough?" At the question, Lotto erased the bewildered expression from his face and tried to answer Suho's question calmly. "I'm truly surprised. A real bloodstone." His gaze was still fixated on the bloodstone in Suho's hand. He couldn't believe it even as he saw it. But no matter how he looked at it, it was the real thing. That's why he was even more confused. "But, as far as I know, Lord Vulcan couldn't create bloodstone." "That was true, but once I mastered it, it was no longer that difficult." "Not difficult?" Lotto's eyes widened in surprise. At that moment, an immense greed spread across the eyes of all the demons in the room. Suho's words were enough to ignite the demons' desires. What was the reason the demons developed Stardust in the first place? It was because they wanted to imitate the Bloodstone, the unique power of the nobles. The blue, the stone was the true proof of nobility, a testament to their existence. Only by being able to create bloodstones could demons efficiently grow their power and become nobles. And furthermore, only by becoming a true noble could they qualify to succeed the deceased king of demons, the White Flame Monarch Baron. But to be able to create bloodstone, and that too, by Vulcan, who had been mocked by his fellow nobles for being unable to do so for countless years. At this point, whether Suho was the real Vulcan or not didn't matter to the demons here. "Did you perhaps awaken the ability to create bloodstones on your own? Why? Do you want to learn?" Lotto's eyes bulged as if they were about to pop out. Now the demons' expressions changed with every word that came out of Suho's mouth. Seeing their reactions, Essil muttered in disgust. "You really are? But everyone." "No, even demons. When someone appears who tells them what they want to hear, they want to believe it." Lotto stammered and asked Suho, "See, can we learn it?" No, you can't. Absolutely not. Bloodstones are. It's not impossible to learn. You scammer." Ignoring Essel's words, Suho spoke to Lotto in a serious and sincere voice, maintaining his composure. But what? At first, it was caution, then shock and fear. Now the demons were hanging on to his every word. Suho, thoroughly enjoying the demons' excessive attention, leaned back on the sofa leisurely and said, "Isn't this a gambling den? If we're here to gamble, let's gamble." "Wait a minute, Lord Vulcan. Gambling isn't important right now." Crack! Suho crushed the bloodstone he was holding with his fingers. "Ah!" The demons stared longingly at it, crumbling into dust and scattering from Suho's hand. Chapter 187, Chapter 186. A strange atmosphere hung over the black market's gambling den. The excitement about humans fighting each other and placing bets was gone. The demons in the VIP room, no longer interested in the matches, were solely focused on the sudden appearance of the demon noble, Vulcan. Oh my god, Vulcan is alive. A real demon noble. If only I could learn how to make bloodstone, I could become a demon noble too. Countless gazes glanced at Vulcan, the pure desire evident within them. The primal and blatant need to pursue power was akin to hunger for demons. But amidst this tense atmosphere, Suho himself remained relaxed, merely watching the underground fights. He looked like a lion lying in the middle of the jungle, basking in the sun, the dignified appearance of a true demon noble. At least, that's how he appeared to the other demons. "Are you sure this is okay?" "What is?" "I'm asking if it's necessary to take such a risk." Essil had been worried sick since earlier. "Don't forget, the reason our family was annihilated was entirely due to the rebellion of the low-ranked demons. They might be momentarily swayed by the sight of the bloodstone, but they could turn on you and attack at any moment." "Yeah, that's exactly it. I've been curious about this for a while." Suho continued to watch the underground fights with a leisurely gaze and asked Essil, "In the demon world, where the hierarchy based on power is so clear, how could the low-ranked demons annihilate your family?" "Well, the numerical disadvantage was overwhelming." "Are you sure? Is that really possible? What are you trying to say?" Essil was a bit irritated. His words sounded like he was blaming the Radiru family for being so weak that they were devoured by such low-ranked demons. But Suho wasn't finished yet. I've become quite strong compared to before, right? So I've realized something. Suho's gaze swept over the surrounding demons, and they flinched at his glance. No matter how many of these guys attack me, I don't think I'll ever lose. His eyes turned cold, like a lion gazing at a flock of hundreds of sheep. What are you trying to say? The Itarim? Are you saying the Itarim were behind the low-ranked demons even back then? Doesn't that make more sense than them suddenly devouring the demon nobles? Suho was almost certain. It had already happened with the Mad Tyrant, and demons were the perfect race to become slaves of the Itarim. They were souls corrupted by mana, so even the Shadow Authority didn't work on them. From the Itarim's perspective, what better race was there to fight against the Shadow Army? Indeed. Essel couldn't help but nod at Suho's persuasive words. So, Suho smiled meaningfully and opened his inventory. Let's take everything these guys have. Thump, I'll bet on that human. Lotto, who received the bundle of Stardust Suho suddenly handed him, was taken aback by its weight. Lord Vulcan, are you really going to bet all this on one match? Why? Is there a problem? There's no rule against it, but if the stakes get too high, the other guests need to agree. At Lotto's words, Suho's gaze swept over the other demons. Even without him saying anything, they all nodded eagerly. We agree. Ahem, why would we be bothered by such a small wager? As expected of demons with a strict hierarchy, they had automatically switched to honorifics the moment they saw Suho making bloodstone. Lotto could only smile bitterly at the sight. This isn't good. After all the nobles disappeared, the demon realm had become a truly egalitarian society. Of course, it was quite different from the democracy humans spoke of. It was a fair world where anyone could devour or be devoured. The weak were preyed upon, and even the strong had their throats bitten and blood sucked if they showed any weakness. It was a complete pandemonium. In this chaotic disorder, demons were scrambling to create a new order by any means necessary. And one of the representative parties was this Lace, the black market. But a demon noble, thought to be extinct, suddenly appears? Just when a new order was about to be established, the old order was making a comeback, and there was nothing they could do. They had already witnessed him creating bloodstone right before their eyes, and he had hinted at the possibility of teaching everyone here how to make it. Psychologically and realistically, it has become an absolutely unbalanced relationship. In this situation, a fair gamble couldn't take place, and the wariness Lotto felt soon became reality. Ahem, then I'll also bet on the human that Lord Vulcan chose. I also think that human looks stronger. Then me too. The demons rushed to the same side as Suho. No one dared to bet against him. As a result, the wager was cancelled. Lotto sighed, rubbing his throbbing forehead. Guests, we can't start the match if everyone bets on the same side. But his words fell on deaf ears. I am certain that human will win, so what can we do? Exactly. Besides, we can't doubt the discerning eye of a demon noble like Lord Vulcan. Lotto gritted his teeth inwardly, watching the demons shrug their shoulders shamelessly as if there was no problem. But then, tsk, how boring. Suho, who had been leisurely observing from behind, suddenly clicked his tongue. Then, with a faint smile on his lips, he muttered softly. Maybe this will make things more interesting. Then a shocking declaration suddenly burst from his mouth. I'll teach the bloodstone creation method to the one who wins the most stardust from me here. At that moment, the demon's eyes, stiff with shock, were filled with astonishment, and then an overwhelming desire began to boil within them. Are you serious? No, of course, we don't doubt your words, Lord Vulcan, but wait a minute. Guests, please calm down. Lotto struggled to cool down the heated atmosphere, but it was already too late. Even he couldn't help but feel greedy. The offer Vulcan had made was incredibly tempting. Now this is getting interesting. Suho, pleased with the heated atmosphere, opened his inventory. Thump, thump, thump. Suho piled up pouches of stardust on the table and said with a meaningful smile, Let the games begin. And so, the biggest gamble of the demons' lives began. What was needed to win here? Incredible luck? A massive wager? Or perhaps a keen eye? No. In fact, they were confident they could beat Vulcan. This underground fighting ring, this wasn't just a place to watch humans fight and place bets. They were merely the VIPs here. The real customers, or rather, the suckers, were the human guests. Roar! The audience seats surrounding the VIP room below, hunters who use the black market gathered there, predicting the outcomes and placing their bets. The odds were essentially 50-50. Win or lose, one of the two would definitely win. It was a simple bet. But those were just the superficial chances. What was a gambling den, after all? It was a place that trapped people in the illusion that they could win money, the illusion that they had narrowly lost. That was the mechanism of a gambling den. The outcome of the matches can be easily manipulated. The moment he heard Vulcan's shocking declaration, Lotto had to struggle to suppress the blatant smirk that was about to appear on his face, and he secretly gave instructions to the attendants in the underground fighting ring. Use the mad-blooded poison. Nod. Looking at the demon attendants nodding, Lotto smiled meaningfully, hiding it from Vulcan. This was the reason why he had gone through the trouble of digging under the gambling den to create the underground fighting ring. The distance between the VIP room and the arena was considerable, so it was easy to deceive the demon's eyes and manipulate the fighters. Even a demon noble can't detect the mad-blooded poison from this distance. Lotto instructed the attendants to subtly manipulate the matches without being too obvious, then approached Vu, Elkan with a friendly smile, and sat beside him. Suho looked at him with an amused expression. Are you planning to participate in the gambling yourself? Yes, it's rare, but honestly, what demon wouldn't be tempted when bloodstone is at stake? Ah, don't worry too much. Even though I'm the manager here, the human participants in the underground fighting ring change every time. So you're saying there's no way to reg the matches? That's right. At Suho's words, Lotto grinned and added his own wager to the table. He tried to remain calm, but his eyes were already burning with ambition. I will obtain the bloodstone creation method. Well, I like your honesty. On the other hand, Suho chuckled and glanced back at the underground fighting ring, muttering, Yes, this will be another amusement. Just then, the queen of insects and the monarch of plagues smells the mad-blooded poison and licks her lips. They're using the mad-blooded poison as expected. Suho smirked inwardly at Koresha's timely message. Detoxify it. Debuff. Mad-blooded poison detoxified. The side effects were removed from the hunter who had been poisoned by the demon attendants. Beru, you called? Let's use it too. At Suho's words, Beru's eyes gleamed maliciously, and he stealthily descended to the underground fighting ring. He hid in the shadow of the hunter Suho had bet on. And coincidentally, this hunter who had lost all his money earlier had the beast transformation skill. Beru uses skill, Harsh Command. Skill, Harsh Command increases the target's stats by 50%. Skill, Harsh Command inflicts the curse of madness on the target as a side effect. The hunter's eyes gradually became clouded with insanity. Chapter 188, Chapter 187. No one could stop him. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues, Koresha's blessing was with Suho. He uses debuff, paralyzing poison. He uses debuff, sleep poison. As Suho got into seriously manipulating the matches, the outcomes in the underground fighting ring became extremely biased. What? Why is that human suddenly limping? Looks like he sprained his ankle or something. Humans are so weak. No, why did that human's eyes suddenly glaze over in the middle of the fight? Must have had a rough night's sleep. Humans are so weak. Another victory for me, I suppose. Slide Suho, with a shameless, or rather a dignified expression, pulled all the winnings on the table towards himself. Watching the stardust pouches piling up in front of him, this can't be. The demons who lost the bets couldn't help but wear dumbfounded expressions. In this atmosphere, Suho calmly assessed the situation and conversed with, surprisingly, they don't make them fight to the death like in the Colosseum. They even have healers prepared. Of course, if someone died here, rumors would spread about hunters disappearing in Yangpyeong. The black market wouldn't want that. Then what's their real purpose? If they're not using the corpses of dead hunters as ingredients for stardust, that's what I'm trying to find out. No matter how you looked at it, the demons here were all lower rank, far weaker than Suho. The only reason he didn't kill them outright and chose this troublesome method was because I can't extract their souls even if I kill them. He couldn't interrogate their shadows after killing them, like he did with Quay or Harmakan. So he had to create an atmosphere where they would willingly spill information while still alive. And there was one more thing. While the attention of the demons in the black market was focused on the gambling den, Beru was diligently searching for Sung Jinwoo. And occasionally, crunch. Huh? Where did the magic stones that were here go? A thief. He would steal magic stones displayed on the stalls, avoiding people's eyes. It seems like we're getting a reaction. As Suho had said, Lotto, who had been observing the situation, was biting his lip with a complicated expression. How could this be? He couldn't help but be flustered. Originally, the hunters participating in the underground fighting ring were all unequipped and matched against opponents of similar rank and physique. That's why the fights were so intense, and the outcome could be overturned with a moment's carelessness or a slight dip in condition. But wasn't it a bit too coincidental, that condition? How come every opponent Vulcan predicts to lose ends up being in bad shape? Was this the true discerning eye of a demon noble? No. It was very suspicious. Well then, place your bets first, this time as well. That's right. Vulcan had never once chosen his hunter first. He always waited until all the demons had placed their bets on both sides before placing his own, always as the very last. And he only placed bets on the underdog, where the payout was higher. It was as if he already knew the outcome of the match. How shameless. As a result, Suho now had 3 times more stardust pouches piled up in front of him than when he first entered. Lotto gritted his teeth. He's definitely up to something. But what's his intention? Vulcan had been obviously manipulating things from the start. If he were going to cheat, he should at least mix in some losses to not seem suspicious, but he was winning in every single match so blatantly. However, the problem was that they had no grounds to complain. They were the ones who started the manipulation in the first place. Even though they were using mad-blooded poison, and the organizers were deliberately rigging the matches, the winner was always the hunter Vulcan chose. Moreover, the humans poisoned with mad-blooded poison were somehow detoxified. I've never heard of Vulcan having such an ability. Alright, at this point, he had no choice but to admit it. The demon noble could have torn them apart and devoured them any time he wanted, without resorting to such tricks. That's why his intentions were even more suspicious. Could it be that he came here knowing everything? Lotto's eyes narrowed as he observed him. There was a rumor widely known in the demon world. According to it, Vulcan was originally an insignificant creature who couldn't even speak. Then, by chance, he ate a leaf from the world tree and suddenly grew into a region's ruler. But now, the half-baked demon noble, thought to be killed in the war, suddenly reappeared, able to create bloodstone and even speak? It's not just his language ability. His intelligence itself has increased. The brilliant scheming ability needed to arrive here out of the blue and instantly manipulate the atmosphere of the gambling den to his will. Could it be that Vulcan is still evolving? Did he barely survive the war thanks to the world tree's blessing? If it's the world tree that gave birth to the rulers, it's certainly possible. Countless thoughts floated in his mind, and in the end, Lotto decided to back down. Sigh, all right, Lord Vulcan. Suho, who had been excitedly raking in the stardust, turned his head towards him at the sudden words. You're saying we should reveal our hand first if we desire bloodstone. Suho just stared at him silently. Lotto looked at the mountain of stardust piled up in front of him and gave a bitter smile. If that was your intention, you could have just said so from the beginning. There was no need for such mischievous tricks. Star piece, did you come here from the beginning because you wanted it? Star piece? A question mark popped up in Suho's mind, but he didn't show it. Then, Lotto suddenly ripped his shirt open and revealed the blue gem implanted in the center of his chest. That's right. As you guessed, Lord Vulcan, the stuff we actually trade are star pieces like this one. They are on a completely different level from that incomplete stardust. So what is this star piece? I don't know, but I doubt they'd be so arrogant if it was just solidified stardust. Suho replied to Essil while maintaining an indifferent expression. Finally, some useful information was starting to come out. Now, this was the real deal. He spoke in a nonchalant voice. Star piece, is it just a substitute for bloodstone? Heh, do you think so? Judging by your words, it seems you're curious after all, perhaps wondering how good the star piece's performance is. Lotto stroked the gem implanted in his chest with an extremely smug expression. If you came here impressed by those stardust necklaces we spread among humans, you're going to be very surprised. Those things are just byproducts discarded during the star piece refinement process. Well, they have their own uses too, but... Their own uses? Does that mean it has other functions besides being a black market pass? Despite maintaining a relaxed demeanor, Suho's mind was racing. Well, of course, we initially started the research simply to imitate Bloodstone, but we got curious about what kind of synergy could occur when the divine power of the outer universe is infused into demon blood. The divine power of the outer universe. That referred to the blue mist emanating from the gates. It was mana sent by the Itarim to dissolve the dimensional walls. In other words, it was the power of the outer gods. Well, that's good. Suho leaned back leisurely again and gestured towards the piles of stardust on the table with his chin. Then I'll bet all of this, and you, from now on, will bet that precious star piece of yours. Haha, that would be a bit difficult. No matter how much stardust you have, it can't compare to the value of a star piece. They're on a different trading scale altogether. Trade. Essel's voice, filled with sudden anger, reached Suho's ears. If this was the mindset of a noble, he decided to imitate her reactions. Trade. That's an interesting word. He smirked. Skill, bloodlust activated. Whoosh. Ugh. Lotto couldn't help but step back, his face pale, at the overwhelming bloodlust emanating from Suho's entire body. The others also flinched and hurriedly lowered their heads. One demon even instinctively prostrated himself on the floor, bowing to Suho. Even in this world, some things never change. Suho slowly stood up, and with an indifferent expression, he slowly approached Lotto. Nobles don't make deals. They only give orders. Tremble. Lotto couldn't move an inch, overwhelmed by the bloodlust, even as Suho's hand tapped the star piece implanted in his chest. It felt like he would rip it out of his body with his brutal hands at any moment to devour it. But Suho didn't do that. If he killed this guy, there would be no way to obtain more information. He withdrew his hand and said, "The reason I'm indulging in this game you created is merely for amusement. If I were hungry..." Growl. At the sound that suddenly echoed from Suho's stomach, all the demons in the gambling den couldn't help but flinch. Oh no! Vulcan is hungry. He's going to eat us. The greedy demon Vulcan's appetite was a terrifying concept for the low-ranked demons. Come to think of it, I skipped a meal today because I was busy. I didn't intend for this to happen. Suho, deeply immersed in his Vulcan method acting, felt a bit embarrassed. But since things had turned out this way, lick. He needlessly licked his lips. At that moment, Lotto, forgetting all about being the manager of the gambling den, had to fight his survival instincts, urging him to flee. No, if Vulcan intended to eat me, I'd be dead already. There must be something this demon wants by coming here. Gulp. There must be. Vulcan swallowed again. Is there? The avaricious demon Vulcan was known to put anything he desired in his mouth first. All right. Lotto finally closed his eyes tightly and shouted. He clutched the star piece embedded in his chest as if it were his lifeline. Then how about a duel between gladiators possessing the star pieces? That would surely be a good amusement for you. A gladiator duel? Suho's bloodlust subsided momentarily at those words. Yes, we have hunters implanted with star pieces for experimental purposes. You can choose one of them and have a gladiator. You implanted star pieces into humans? At that moment, Suho's hand, filled with rage, grabbed Lotto by the throat, who screamed in surprise, as if struck by lightning. It was just for research purposes, I swear. The outer gods agreed too. He stopped. Found you, you bastards. Suho's eyes flashed. Chapter 189, Chapter 188, The Outer Gods. Suho's expression turned cold as he heard Lotto's exclamation. His mind was racing with all sorts of thoughts, but he had to remain calm for now. Interesting. Thud. Suho released his grip, and Lotto's body crumpled to the floor. Gasp! He frantically checked that his neck was still attached and looked at Vulcan with a servile expression. Suho looked down at him with a haughty gaze and thought. The demons here naturally assumed that Vulcan knew everything. What should I do in this situation? I'll keep my words to a minimum and just repeat what these guys say like a parrot. The outer gods. Agreed? Yes. They said we could gain many followers on Earth by cooperating with them. Gain followers. And this is the best you could do? Suho's gaze swept across the chaotic gambling den. Lotto, the manager of this place, replied with a slightly offended expression. This isn't the best. There are black markets in other places too. Even now, we're spreading stardust worldwide through various methods in cooperation with the outer gods. Cooperation. Suho smirked and provoked him. It looks like you've just became their slaves. That's not true. Was this the trigger? Lotto, forgetting that he had just been begging for his life, shouted as if having a seizure. We were the ones who first developed stardust, and we were the ones who succeeded in creating star pieces. They're the ones being used by us demons. Do you truly believe that? Yes. Finally, a satisfied expression appeared on Suho's face. He looked at Lotto with an approving gaze, and his feelings were genuine. How could he not be impressed? Thanks to this guy, I've learned a lot. Yo, you're killing it, my dude. Where did you learn that saying? The internet. Essil's voice was filled with genuine admiration. At this rate, one might even believe that Suho was a real demon noble, not a human. Be honest, are you actually Vulcan? Shut up, this is where it gets important. Suho brushed off Essil's words and used the ruler's authority to lift Lotto back to his feet, who, realizing that he had just defied a demon noble, turned pale. If that's what you truly believe, Suho commanded him solemnly, guide me right now. I'll meet the outer gods myself. At those words, Lotto closed his eyes tightly, as if expecting what was to come. But at the same time, a meticulous calculation was running through his mind. No, this might actually be a good thing. Those guys were getting out of control anyway. Vulcan must have come here looking for us, knowing everything from the start. He finally answered, I'll guide you right away. To the temple of the outer gods. No need. Because we've come ourselves. At that moment, a group of people emitting an immense aura entered the gambling den. Hunter Association, Yangpyeong Branch. Is that true? Team leader Han Jae-yuk, who had rushed over after receiving Suho's call, was shocked to hear about what had happened here. Bzzz! Countless bees were flying around the Yangpyeong Branch, surrounding it. Among them, an avatar of Arsha, a woman with an alluring smile, gently poked one of her subordinates with a fingertip and nodded at team leader Han Jae-yuk's question. Yes, it's all true. Isn't that right, everyone? Gulp. As Arsha turned around, the Yangpyeong Branch employees gathered there shuddered simultaneously. Buzzed! The bees swarmed around them like piranhas, each radiating an ominous mana, threatening to sting them with their venomous stingers at any moment if Arsha so much as twitched a finger. What kind of skill is this? Where did this woman suddenly come from? Because of Arsha's skill, used when Suho left, the Yangpyeong Branch employees had been confined to their offices, unable to move. Until the association's surveillance department, dispatched to arrest them, arrived. This was because he suspected that some of them might be colluding with the black market. Oh my, branch manager, I asked you a question. You should answer it. Yes, it's all true. Everything is true. Min Dae-sok nodded repeatedly with a pale face at Arsha's gentle urging. Team leader Han Jae-yuk sighed and said in a weary tone, watching the scene, Arrest them all. Yes. At his command, the hunters from the surveillance department detained all the Yangpyeong Branch employees. How could this happen? Team leader Han Jae-yuk, after hearing the whole story, was dumbfounded. The association harboring a black market. To think our organization is in such a mess. It hasn't even been that long since the chairman left. In truth, it wasn't uncommon for any institution with a large number of employees to become corrupt from within. But the Hunter Association was only 2 years old. It was absurd for something like this to happen so soon. It was almost suspicious, as if someone had deliberately infiltrated them. To think. The Stardust necklace was created as a pass to the black market. He sighed, glancing down, then grabbed the string hanging around his neck, intending to rip it off. What started as a small tribute to the victims of Stardust also became quite openly embraced within the Hunter Association. It wasn't an official event or anything, but it was literally a case of everyone started wearing one without anyone prompting them. But What was this feeling? Suddenly, the hand which was about to remove the stardust necklace stopped, and a thought came to his mind. Well, I paid for it, so should I just keep wearing it? I might need it later to sneak into the black market. What's wrong, team leader? It seems you suddenly don't want to throw that necklace away. Flinch. Startled by the alluring voice that whispered in his ear, Han Jae-hyuk widened his eyes and raised his head. Arsha, her face uncomfortably close, was looking at him with a mysterious smile. She whispered as if she had read his mind. Have you ever thought about this? If it's just for commemoration, why do people bother wearing it around their necks when they could just buy it and keep it at home? As she spoke, Arsha gently caressed the stardust necklace Han Jae-hyuk was wearing with her delicate hand. Snap! She forcibly ripped it off, and a momentary look of regret flashed across Team Leader's eyes. It seems you're quite attached to it? Gasp! Team Leader Han Jae-hyuk, finally snapping out of his daze, widened his eyes in shock. Arsha playfully wrinkled her nose and dangled the necklace in front of his eyes. Stay sharp. This necklace bewitches ordinary humans with low resistance. Team Leader Han Jae-hyuk remained dazed even while conversing with her. A chill ran down his spine. The emotion he had felt for a brief moment was too strange. I wanted to take it back. I didn't want to lose the necklace. Well, don't worry too much. According to what Suho found out, the effects of the Stardust necklace disappear quickly when it's far from the body. The one here was Arsha's avatar. The real Queen Bee was inside the Shadow Dungeon, whose owner was still pretending to be Vulcan in the black market. Thanks to that, she could relay the information Suho had discovered directly to Team Leader Han Jae-hyuk. It seems the Stardust necklace is a byproduct created during the star piece manufacturing process. But even though its effects are weak, when it falls into the hands of ordinary humans, they strangely want to keep it close and develop a vague sense of faith. The outer gods, Itarim, are literally gods after all. That's why humans who come into direct contact with their power develop faith in that unknown deity. Wait, outer gods? Suddenly a certain memory flashed through Han Jae-hyuk's mind. Outer gods. I'm sure I've heard that somewhere. The outer gods cult? Arsha's eyes also lit up at his words. You've heard of the outer gods religion, team leader? Outer god's cult? Ah, the outer gods cult. Han Jae-hyuk's eyes widened. And he looked around. Where was he again? The Yangpyeong branch of the association. And he looked at branch manager Min Dae-seok, who had been arrested by the surveillance department. See, come to think of it, Min Dae-seok had been suddenly transferred here a few months ago. It was because the previous branch manager, who had been in charge of the Yangpyeong branch, suddenly quit the association due to personal reasons. And that former branch manager was an A-rank hunter personally chosen by Chairman Woo Jin-chul to lead the Yangpyeong branch, a senior whom Team Leader Han Jae-hyuk greatly respected. Why did the former branch manager quit? At Arsha's question, he gritted his teeth, recalling the memory of that time. I only heard rumors, but that person suddenly got involved in a cult and disappeared. An A-rank hunter getting involved in a cult? It sounded absurd, but if the Outer Gods cult targeted them, nothing was impossible. He was such a kind person, but suddenly... Outer Gods cult. Suho scanned the people who had entered the gambling den with cold eyes. People clad in priestly robes. Each of them had a blue star piece embedded in their forehead. The middle-aged man at the center of their formation stepped forward and looked at him with an infinitely benevolent smile. Welcome. Are you the demon noble Vulcan? And who are you? I am a priest who serves the great outer gods. In the mortal world, I went by the name Kim Chul. Keek. At that moment, Beru, who had returned from exploring the surroundings, shouted with a bright smile. Iron, you're back! Chapter 190, Chapter 189. It's pointless to explain how Chairman Woo Jin-chul has acted since the cataclysm. He was a figure known by all Koreans, but at the same time, he was also a person who evoked strong opinions, both positive and negative. In retrospect, his choices were always right, but the process always seemed reckless and daring. This inevitably led to resentment from many behind the scenes. Among them, there was one aspect that hunter guilds, in particular, were especially unhappy about. It was the problem with talent recruitment. What, he was snatched away by the chairman again? Yes, as soon as he awakened, the association somehow found out and offered him a position. No way. This person didn't even go for a mana test yet. How did the association even know he awakened? Exactly. Sigh. Just how good is the association's information network? Indeed. Truly remarkable information gathering capabilities. Chairman Wu Jinchul had an uncanny ability to find promising potential hunters before anyone else and somehow bring them into the association. From the perspective of the guilds eager to recruit talent and expand their power, his actions were enough to make them detest him. Especially when he recruited S-rank hunter Choi Jong-in, countless guildmasters all sighed with deep regret. Senior Kim Chul was also one of the talents personally recruited by the chairman. Team leader Han Jae-hyuk was recalling the past as he talked with Arsha. The conversation between Kim Chul, who had just awakened as an A-rank tanker, and Wu Jinchul was a famous anecdote. What kind of hunter do you want to be? At Wu Jinchul's question, Kim Chul responded with a question of his own. Chairman, do you know what my motto is? What is it? To live a good life. Kim Chul stated the motto he lived by since his teenage years and smiled brightly at Wu Jinchul. Although he was now middle-aged, his smile retained the innocence of a teenage boy. Witnessing the pure sense of justice in his eyes, the chairman smiled contentedly and asked again, Does that mean you want to be a good hunter? Yes. Since I've become a hunter, I want to fight with pride to protect the world. That's a truly admirable mindset. Come to the association. I'll entrust you with an important mission. I look forward to working with you. Just like that, Kim Chul firmly shook hands with Wu Jinchul and joined the Hunter Association without hesitation. But after joining the association, Senior Kim Chul was deeply disappointed. Team leader Han Jae-hyuk muttered with a bitter expression. It was inevitable that he would be disappointed. Kim Chul had joined the association with the aspiration of becoming a great hunter who protects the world. The task the chairman entrusted to him was protecting this very place, the Yangpyeong branch. Arsha nodded in understanding. Yangpyeong was too peaceful a town for a hunter with ambitions to protect the world. Moreover, since many wealthy people lived there, malicious commenters even went as far as to say that the Yangpyeong branch manager was a dog guarding the rich. In the end, Senior Kim Chul left the association on his own. Many believed that the rumors about him joining a cult were just excuses or nonsense. Arsha relayed everything team leader Han Jae-hyuk had said to Suho, who, receiving her words in real time, was a bit surprised inwardly. Chairman Wu Jinchul personally chose him to lead the Yangpyeong branch? According to Beru, Kim Chul was once a shadow soldier named Iron, but as Earth returned to the time before his death, he was revived and started a new life. Just like Hwang Dong-soo, who was once the shadow soldier Greed and now lived as an S-rank villain. But to think that Kim Chul became a hunter in the association and was the branch manager of the Yangpyeong branch where his grandparents lived, could that be a coincidence? No, absolutely not. Suho immediately grasped the situation. It was for my father. Chairman Wu Jinchul remembered everything about his past life related to his father. That meant he was protecting Yangpyeong through the association in case my grandparents were in danger while my father was away, by assigning the Yangpyeong branch to someone trustworthy. Perhaps, in Chairman Wu Jinchul's mind, there was no one more trustworthy than Kim Chul, who was once his father's shadow soldier. But to think Kim Chul would become a priest serving the Itarim in such an unexpected place. It seemed that even the great Wu Jinchul couldn't have foreseen such a variable. You're a priest of the Outer Gods cult. That's correct. If you're Kim Chul, you would have been the branch manager of the Yangpyeong branch. At Suho's pointed question, Kim Chul nodded with a benevolent smile. Ha ha, it seems there's nothing Lord Vulcan doesn't know. That's right, I was once part of the Hunter Association. Then why are you here now? Ha ha, that's quite hurtful. You're not suspecting me just because I was briefly with the association, are you? Or are you doubting the power of this star piece? Kim Chul smiled benevolently and raised his large hand to caress the star piece embedded in his forehead. An auspicious blue aura emanated from it, and a glint of madness flashed in his eyes, lips curling into a grin. Our Outer Gods cult bestows the baptism of the star piece, or rather, the outer God stone, only upon those who have proven their faith. So you need not doubt. I simply believe that the outer gods cult is more dedicated to the world's well-being than the association. Kill him now. There's no need to listen to such nonsense any longer. Beru whispered like a demon beside Suho. Kill, 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 kill. You must strike down that corrupted soldier, Iron, and bring him back to the Shadow Army. Haha, Lord Vulcan, please calm down for a moment. As you know, there's no reason for us to be at odds. Perhaps due to the aura Beru was emitting, Kim Chul dabbed the beads of sweat forming on his forehead with a handkerchief. Suho discreetly stepped on Beru to suppress him, then looked at Kim Chul and spoke solemnly. I have a question, priest of the outer gods. No matter how much he was pretending to be Vulcan, he had to ask this one question out of genuine curiosity. Haha, even a demon noble has things they don't know. Yes, feel free to ask anything. Are there any side effects to implanting a star piece into a human? Maybe losing hair, like you? At that moment, Kim Chul's benevolent smile, which he had maintained until now, faltered for the first time. He lowered his gaze slightly and replied, This is just ordinary hair loss. I see. Come to think of it, the other humans beside you still have their hair. Then are there no other side effects to the star piece? Suho nodded as if it were nothing and changed the subject. A slight wrinkle appeared on Kim Chul's forehead where the star piece was embedded, and he forced a smile, clenching his teeth. Of course not. How could there be any side effects? The star piece is a grace bestowed upon lowly humans like us by the gods. Whoosh! Along with his words, the stone on his forehead emitted streaks of blue aura. Ha! Kim Chul inhaled the aura deeply, his expression filled with ecstasy. Hey, do you feel it? If stardust merely amplified the power one possesses, the outer godstone elevates the owner's power to a whole new dimension. In other words, it allows one to be reborn as a higher being. At the same time, Kim Chul's star piece shimmered with a blue light, and his aura grew stronger. It was undeniable that it far surpassed the mana limit of Kim Chul, who was known as an A-rank hunter. Unbelievable. He's absorbing the divine power of the outer god and emitting an aura close to S-rank. It's similar to the principle of me summoning Grey into my body. Suho instantly understood the principle of the star piece. Misinterpreting his expression, Kim Chul opened his arms wide towards Suho with an infinitely benevolent smile and a glint of madness in his eyes, laughing brightly. So how about joining us, Lord Vulcan? Worshipping and praising the outer gods is the mission and destiny of all mortals. If it is a mission of mortals, what's in it for me? Suho chuckled and subtly hinted, and Kim Chul's eyes gleamed with a meaningful expression. You already know, don't you? The real reason why you, a demon noble, sought us out. You want to become the king of demons using the outer godstone, right? You're quick-witted. Ha ha! I've observed many demons over the years. Low-ranked demons may aspire to become demon nobles, but the greedy Vulcan's goal must be the demon king. It is. Why are you acting like this too? Ignoring Essel's surprised voice, Suho swept his cold gaze around. First of all, Grandpa isn't among them. After confirming the faces of the Outer Gods cult members one by one, Suho asked Kim Chul, who was excitedly preaching on his own, Are you all the Outer Gods cult members here? Of course not. The other believers are all praying in the chapel. Guide me. Haha, showing interest in the chapel right away. As expected, my prediction was correct. Let's go to the chapel together and accept the Outer God's stone. Kim Chul didn't doubt Suho in the slightest. Vulcan was known as the demon of greed because he was the greediest among all demons. With the other demon nobles gone, what he desired most must be the throne of the demon king. So when are you planning to kill them? Wait, when they're all gathered, so no one can escape. Listening to Beru's whispers, urging him to ambush and kill Iron, Suho followed the cult members out of the gambling den and towards the chapel. Soon, a massive door appeared before him. As Kim Chul placed his palm on the giant door, his star piece glowed, and the heavy door opened automatically. Creak! Then, a vast dome-shaped room came into his view. Inside, he saw Outer Gods cult members prostrating themselves and chanting prayers like madmen. But this incredibly spacious room felt cramped for one reason. That's... Suho's eyes lit up. At the farthest end of the chapel, Something gigantic beyond comprehension was sitting on a chair as large as itself. A statue of a god, unimaginably massive. "Welcome, Vulcan. This is the chapel of our outer god's cult." As soon as Kim Chul finished speaking, the heads of the members praying in the chapel all lifted at once, staring at Suho. Then they all smiled brightly, revealing their teeth with the same expression, and their mouths continued to chant prayers without pause. "Thou shalt worship God. Thou shalt worship God. Thou shalt worship God. Thou shalt worship God. Thou shalt praise God. Thou shalt praise God. Thou shalt praise God. Thou shalt praise God. Thou shalt prove thy faith. Thou shalt prove thy faith. Thou shalt prove thy faith. Thou shalt prove thy faith." And then, boom, the chapel door closed behind Suho with a loud bang. From the doorway, Kim Chul, smiling brighter than anyone else, uttered the last verse of the prayer. "Those who fail to obey these commandments shall not be spared." Chapter 191, Chapter 190, Temple. 1. Thou shalt worship God. 2. Thou shalt praise God. 3. Thou shalt prove thy faith. For those who fail to obey these commandments shall not be spared. Ding, rules of the Cardion Temple. Suddenly, the air in the chapel changed drastically. "Little monarch, this energy, it's that of the Itarim. It's a trap. It seems this place is—" But before Beru's and Isil's urgent voices could finish, "Praise Itarim!" Along with Kim Chul's booming voice, a grotesque chorus erupted from the mouths of the cult members in the chapel. It seems like a place where they sacrifice those who aren't followers of the outer gods. Worship and revere. Prove your faith. Ding, ding, ding. System messages appeared one after another before Suho's eyes. Itarim's blessing restricts the mana of non-believers. Whoosh! An unknown force suppressed Suho's magic power. Itarim's blessing permits the use of mana to those who have proven their faith. Itarim's blessing grants divine power to those who have proven their faith. Kill Vulcan! At Kim Chul's command, all the outer gods' cult members, with bright smiles on their faces, launched a concentrated attack on Suho. Boom, 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 ha! A demon noble walked right into our trap. Even Vulcan himself is nothing but a sacrifice when his mana is sealed. Punch at that moment. The cult member who charged at the forefront had his jaw dislocated by Suho's sudden punch. Bang! His body was flung back faster than he had charged, crashing into the wall. The eyes of all the outer gods' cult members, including Kim Chul, widened in shock. There stood Suho, grinning, completely unharmed. "Well, I've confirmed that Grandpa isn't here." Crack. He clenched his fists and stepped forward, scanning the faces of the cultists who had attacked him, eyes burning with rage. "Now I'll kill you, and then ask questions." Bang! Suho's figure shot forward, kicking off the ground. Even with his mana sealed, he still had skills that didn't consume magic power, and the stats directly engraved into his body, along with the Vulcan's horns he was already equipped with, were no exception. Effect: Destruction Desire. Increases physical damage by 300%. Crash! Ack! The outer gods' cult members were sent flying in all directions like fallen leaves. Once Suho went on a rampage, nothing could stand in his way. Kim Chul even stepped forward himself. "Kaha! You struggle quite a bit. As expected of a demon noble, you make a fine sacrifice." Flash! He channeled blue energy from the star piece on his forehead and swung a large shield towards Vulcan. Whoosh! Bang! Fist and shield collided. A tremendous shockwave spread out in all directions. Their gazes met in midair. He's not at the level of an ordinary A rank. Is this truly the power of a demon noble? But that was only for a moment. "I'll crush you." Suho's fierce attacks followed, raining down like shotgun blasts. Ugh! Kim Chul gritted his teeth and endured everything while swinging the sword with his other hand. Suho immediately grabbed the Vulcan's horns attached to his head with both hands and swung them forward. Clang! In an instant, the two horns transformed into swords and sliced through the air. Ruler's authority. This skill didn't consume mana, so the weapons shot out from Suho's hands. No. Kim Chul's eyes widened, and he stumbled backward. Every time he dodged Suho's attacks, other Outer Gods cult members were mercilessly slaughtered in his place. Cog! Believers caught in the attacks coughed up blood and died. But that moment, something surprising happened. Flash! The star pieces embedded in the foreheads of the fallen began emitting blue energy. It streamed out and enveloped their bodies, then ignited into blue flames. Whoosh! A blue demonic energy took control of the corpses and raised them like puppets. Mistburn? No, it was similar to Mistburn, but different. The Outer Gods cult members were being controlled by the star pieces even in death. Cog! The corpses, bound by the blue demonic energy, flew through the air and attacked Suho. Little Monarch, you have to attack the star pieces themselves. Beru and Esil shouted. It seems they are the medium connecting Itarim and these guys. They are using them like a kind of possessed priest. Suho's eyes flashed as he said those words. Like me. At that moment, the king of beasts and the monarch of fangs licks his lips. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues raises her eyes. The king of the snowfolk and the monarch of frost is watching you. Even though his mana was sealed, it had no effect on the souls of the monarchs who were already dead and wandering the sea of the afterlife. Just as the energy of Itarim, existing far away in the outer universe, empowered the cult members through the star pieces. Come out, Grey. Esil, Fush, growl. At that moment, a giant wolf enveloped in silver light burst out from Suho's shadow and struck the enemies. Slash! Esil, who had been residing in Vulcan's horn, also emerged and swung her spear at them. Well, what's this, all of a sudden? Kim Chul couldn't help but be flustered as the number of Suho's allies suddenly increased. Iron, come quickly. At that moment, a whispering voice came from behind him. He shuddered and hurriedly turned around, but there was nothing there. Ah, ghost! Kim Chul was startled and turned back around, readjusting his posture. But why? Come quickly. He wanted to go. Wherever that place was. What is this feeling? He was confused, so confused. His subconscious was welcoming that ghostly voice. Everyone, snap out of it. There are only a few of them, for the glory of Itarim. Suppressing his instincts, Kim Chul shouted at his followers, as if talking to himself. For Itarim. They raised their voices and mustered all their strength. We are willing to die. For Itarim. Even if we live, it's for Itarim. Even in death, we shall become servants of Itarim. Kill Vulcan. With the blood of a demon noble, we can create a massive amount of star pieces. The living Outer Gods cult members and those controlled by star pieces, while already dead, joined forces to attack Suho. But despite being vastly outnumbered, he only smiled, lips curling upwards as he spoke. Come out, all of you. He might not be able to use mana, but so what? All of his shadow skills didn't consume mana anyway. Skill, Monarch's Domain activated. The stats of shadow soldiers fighting within the caster's shadow are increased by 50%. Whoosh! Suho's shadow spread out in all directions, centering around him, and from within it, the shadow soldiers who followed him rose. Scatter and destroy the star pieces. Yes! Screech! Kui, faster than anyone else, transformed into a spear and pierced through the enemies. Crack! Shatter! Ku! As his spear pierced through the star pieces embedded in the cultists' foreheads, blue light scattered into dust. Along with it, the Itarim's energy that controlled them dissipated, and their bodies collapsed on the spot. What is this? Kim Chul, the priest who had been leading them, panicked and stumbled around in confusion. Itarim, save us! Save us! Save us! But then, what is this feeling? Something was strange, very strange. Monarch's Domain is activated. From the moment an ominous shadow filled the entire chapel where the battle was taking place. From the moment Kim Chul stood on his shadow, for some reason, he had to desperately resist the instinct to run to Vulcan, kneel before him, and bow his head. Why? Why? What's happening? Could it be that this demon noble Vulcan brainwashed me? If that was right, it is a truly demonic trick. Ka! How dare you try to bewitch me, a priest who serves the great gods? Do you think I'll fall for it? Kim Chul gritted his teeth and charged towards Suho. He focused all his strength into one point. Die, Vulcan! Ah, who's there? At the ghostly voice whispering behind him once again, Kim Chul shouted and swung his arm backward. And there, a real ghost stood, a black shadow. An ant-like evil spirit was grinning at him with a cruel smile. Come quickly. Crack! That was the last thing Kim Chul saw before he died. Why did such a strong person get distracted in the middle of a fight? Well, I am fast, but still. Kui, who had pierced through the back of his head and shattered the star piece, tilted his head in wonder. Beru looked down at Kim Chul's corpse and chuckled. He must have missed the monarch's domain so much. Little monarch, quickly, extract irons. Suho had already arrived in front of Kim Chul's corpse. Shadow extraction is possible on this target. Was he one of my father's soldiers? Perhaps because of that, Kim Chul's shadow was already writhing even before Suho got close, as if it was about to rise on its own without even needing extraction. Rise? Shadow extraction successful. Ha! As soon as Suho finished speaking, Kim Chul's shadow swirled and sprang up. Kaha! I'm back! Keek! You're finally back, Iron! Kaha! I remember everything. All my memories are back. Kim Chul burst into laughter with Beru as soon as he became a shadow. He suddenly turned his head towards Suho. Having once served Sung Jinwoo, he instinctively knew Suho's relationship with him, Little Monarch, my new master. But at that moment, shiver! Suho's sense stat sent a warning, and as he turned his head in that direction with a fearful expression, the two eyes of the giant statue sitting on the chair at the far end of the chapel were staring at him. Watch out! Before Iron could finish his urgent warning, Suho instinctively twisted his body to the side. Almost simultaneously, blue beams shot out from both eyes of the statue. Zing! They narrowly missed him and caused massive explosions. Boom! 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 The blue beams swept through the area, melting the bodies of the Outer Gods cult members who were there. Wah! Ah! Ack! Only the grotesque remnants were left after the beams had passed. The screams came not from them, but from the other believers who witnessed their demise. I guess he's not a very merciful god. Suho sneered and glared ahead. The statue, which had just killed the believers who were praying before it, was now smiling brightly at Suho. It was a cruel smile. To think I'd witnessed the Shadow Authority in a place like this. A grotesque, echoing voice flowed from the statue's mouth. The emotion felt from that voice was clear, killing intent towards Suho. And a distinct appetite, as if it had found a delicious meal right before its eyes. How pathetic, getting cocky just because you killed one measly priest. The statue of Itarim mocked Suho and spoke, but I have plenty of priests who serve me, one's far more powerful than that. It smiled meaningfully and turned its head. Rumble. One side of the chapel walls crumbled under the blue beam. Beyond it, a gate was hidden, blue mist billowing out from it. Come forth, High Priest. At those words, a silhouette slowly emerged from within the gate. Gasp! This is bad. Iron, who had just become Suho's shadow soldier, suddenly recalled his memories from when he was still alive and shouted at Suho. The High Priest of the Outer Gods cult is the S-rank villain, Hwang Dongsu, formerly known as Greed in the Shadow Army. At those words, Suho and Beru's expressions hardened. Why was Hwang Dongsu appearing here all of a sudden? And as the High Priest of Itarim, no less. With the power of the Star Piece added to his already S-rank awakened abilities, his strength would undoubtedly be tremendous. Thud! Along with the statue's maniacal laughter, Hwang Dongsu finally emerged from the gate. But he wasn't walking out on his own. He was being dragged out by the hand of a white-haired old man. Chapter 1-2, Chapter 191. It was the first time the statue's expression, which had been fixed in a wicked smile, faltered. Hwang Dongsu. He was a high priest. The Outer Gods cult had painstakingly brainwashed a human with S-rank power. Corrupting the soul of someone like that was an extremely difficult and tedious task. First, they had to build a relationship by slowly giving him missions he wouldn't suspect. Then, when they felt his suspicions had subsided, they entrusted him with the distribution of stardust necklaces and star pieces, gradually tainting him with Itarim's divine power. And after much time and effort, they finally succeeded in making him the high priest. The S-rank, Hwang Dongsu, was the result of such arduous work. But why? Why was their painstakingly crafted high priest being dragged out like this? How? Rumble! Rumble! The statue of Itarim was enraged beyond comparison to when Kim Chul died, rising from its chair. But the answer to the statue's question came not from the old man dragging Hwang Dongsu, but from Suho's mouth. Gee, Grandpa? At Suho's voice, Sung Il-wan's indifferent expression brightened, and he looked at him. Well, who do we have here? What's my grandson doing here? The reason why the father of the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, regained the memories from his past life was a dream. That dream again. At first, he dismissed it as a location he had seen in a movie. It was just a fragmented scene, and the content was nothing more than a childish dream of him fighting monsters. Even those few fragments of the dream would mostly disappear by the time he woke up and had his morning coffee, vanishing without a trace. Well, that's how dreams usually were. But no matter how carefully you use an eraser, if you rub too much, traces will remain on the paper. That dream again. At some point, the scenes from that dream wouldn't disappear from Sung Il-won's mind even after morning came and afternoon arrived. Still, he didn't pay much attention to it. It was just a dream, after all. But there was one thing that bothered him. Why is Jinwoo, Sung Il-won's son, always appeared in his dreams? Especially on days when he talked or did something with him in reality. He would always have that dream when he fell asleep. "Did you not miss me, father?" His son, Sung Jinwoo, would be looking at him with a resentful gaze, and the following words would always come out of his mouth. "I missed you, always." And Sung Il-won would caress the face which was right in front of him. Tears streaming from his son's eyes would wet the back of his hand. The tears were so hot that, even though he knew it was a dream, it hurt so much. "You grew up well, even though this father had done nothing for you." At those words, Sung Jinwoo would express a terrifyingly heavy anger and ask, "The rulers? Are those guys using and discarding you, father?" The rulers. He didn't know who they were, but Sung Il-won shook his head. "They merely gave me a choice. I chose to protect you, and that choice wasn't wrong in the slightest." As he answered and caressed his son's face, his hands started to crumble and scatter like ashes. "I wanted to talk to you more. I wanted to be with you a little longer." But in the end, he made Jinwoo erase his father from his heart twice. Tears streamed down Sung Il-won's eyes, which he had tried so hard to hold back. "I'm sorry for not being a good father." With those words, rustle. Sung Il-won's entire body turned to ashes. Even while scattering like gray dust, he could see it. His son's expression as he approached to embrace the crumbling body of his incompetent father, the terrible anger contained in his eyes. Ah! Then, the mana in the atmosphere vibrated. The sky, the air, the ground, all wept. "Do you hear me, monarchs? You will pay for what you did today." The enraged Shadow Monarch's roar shook heaven and earth. Shadow Monarch? That day, Sung Il-won woke up in his bed, pressed his forehead, and sighed. Oh dear. And so he recalled the memories from his past life that he had forcibly erased to enjoy an ordinary life with his son. In retrospect, perhaps it was inevitable. Sung Jinwoo had already become a being far superior to the rulers he had asked to erase his memories. From that perspective, it was perhaps inevitable, not coincidental, that his memories returned as he constantly interacted with such a son. And as always, there was meaning in everything. Not long after Sung Il-won remembered his past life, Sung Jinwoo disappeared, just like he had disappeared long ago, to fight a lonely war alone. And then the cataclysm occurred. Has Earth turned back to how it was then? Seeing the gates and dungeon breaks that had begun anew, Sung Il-won couldn't hide his bitterness. But unfortunately, there was nothing he, an old man, could change. No, actually, there was something he could do if he put his mind to it. Even old, he still had mana, just like before. But Sung Il-won had no intention of making the same mistakes. The voice of his son, who always looked at him with resentment in his dreams, was deeply engraved in his mind. "Are you going to leave without a word again, father?" "No way. I can't repeat my errors." Sung Il-won made his choice. Long ago, as soon as he awakened his mana, he became a hunter and jumped into dungeons without hesitation, for the noble mission of sacrificing himself to save the world and for the wealth and glory that followed. But this time, I'll protect my family. In this life, even after awakening his mana, Sung Il-won remained by his wife's side. Protecting the world was for the young. He chose to grow old peacefully with his beloved and spend the rest of their life together. Of course, he occasionally used fishing as an excuse to clean up simple dungeons close to his house. And that's how he discovered the black market that had appeared nearby. At first, Sung Il-won only intended to take a quick look around. But the moment he stepped inside, he discovered the statue of Itarim within. Covetous soul. A grotesque voice pierced Sung Il-won's mind. Zing! Boom! Sung Il-won approached Suho, narrowly dodging the blue beam that shot out from the statue's eyes. "Grandpa, what are you doing here?" "Huh, what are you talking about? What are you doing here?" "I'm here for you, of course." Suho's eyes widened as he saw Sung Il-won up close. Countless star pieces were embedded all over his body, dozens of them, compared to Kim Chul and the other Outer Gods cult members who only had one on their foreheads. "Grandpa, what is this?" "Ah, this? I almost got caught and had to undergo some modifications." Inventory. Suho immediately opened his inventory and took out a bunch of items spring water of the Echo Forest. Dodging the giant foot of the statue of Itarim that was descending from above to crush them, he shoved the potion bottles into Sung Il-won's mouth. "Drink this first." "Oof. Gulp gulp." He hurriedly drank the detoxification potion. But even in this urgent situation, he seemed quite happy to be talking to his grandson after a long time. "This tastes awful. Is it good for you?" "Now's not the time for jokes." Suho struck down the fanatics attacking from the side and escaped Itarim's range with Sung Il-won. An enraged voice erupted from the statue towards Sung Il-won. "You insignificant mortal! High priest, rise! Flash!" At that moment, a blue aura surged from Hwang Dong-su's collapsed body, and he floated into the air. Like Suho's grandfather, he had dozens of star pieces embedded all over his body. "How did you escape the power of our divinity?" "Insignificant?" Sung Il-won smirked at the statue's words. "It seems you don't understand the meaning of insignificant." He tapped the dozens of star pieces embedded in his body and said, "You think you can brainwash me with these pebbles?" Boom. The statue's attack shattered the ground where he stood. Kag! Hwang Dong-su, having lost his sanity, also flew towards them and attacked. The blue energy he emitted exploded, causing another one of the chapel walls to crumble. Sung Il-won lightly evaded and spread his arms wide. Then, surprisingly, the dozens of star pieces embedded all over his body also emitted streaks of blue energy and enveloped him. Flash! The aura gathered in Sung Il-won's hands had transformed into blue daggers. He wielded them as if he had been doing nothing else all his life. Swish! 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 The blue energy slashed through the air, attacking the statue and Hwang Dong-su. "How dare you! A non-believer without any reverence for the god tries to use divine power." The statue of Itarim became even more enraged and shot blue beams from its eyes. At that moment, "Grandpa, boom!" Suho struck the statue's leg with all his might. Its balance faltered, and the direction of the blue beams twisted away from Sung Il-won. "Oh my, look how much my grandson has grown." Sung Il-won grinned, proud of Suho, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Just like his father. "Grandpa." Suho cut off Sung Il-won's playful remark and looked ahead with a serious gaze. "Can you follow my instructions?" His lips curled upwards. "Always." At that moment, Sung Il-won's eyes, fixed on the statue, also turned sharp, just like Suho's, who charged towards the statue with all his might. "How dare you!" The statue's blue beam narrowly missed his head. "Ha!" Suho raised his fist, but didn't attack the statue. He struck the chapel floor where it was standing. Boom! The statue's balance wavered for a moment. Now, as if waiting for those words, Sung Il-won appeared before the statue. Flash! Blue light exploded. Ding! Itarim's blessing. Rules of the Kartan Temple deactivated. Chapter 193. Chapter 192. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Blue energy swirled violently. "This meager power, I shall return it to you." Star pieces. Dozens of Outer Gods' jewels were forcibly implanted into Sung Il-won's body. The mana of the outer universe emanating from them condensed into 2 daggers in his hands and exploded. "How dare you!" Zing! The blue beam shooting from the enraged statue's eyes split the wall in half. "You insignificant mortal!" Rumble! Crash! The chapel began to collapse under the statue's extreme rage. But that no longer mattered. The debuff, rules of the Kartan Temple that had controlling the chapel, was broken. Whoosh! Finally, the force that had been restricting Suho's mana disappeared. Good. His eyes gleamed ominously, gaze meeting Sung Il-won's, who was blocking the statue from above, in midair. Silent words were exchanged. Now show me how much he had grown. Despite the sudden turn of events, Sung Il-won had grasped quite a lot the moment he saw Suho. How could he not? He was the father who raised Sung Jinwoo, the most extraordinary person. And even if no one acknowledged him, he was a warrior who fought alone to protect his son in secrecy. Therefore, no explanations are needed. Sung Ilwan could already see it clearly. Show me your strength. The great shadow beneath Suho's feet connected to the deep darkness. Show me how deep is your darkness. How much his grandson, whom he always thought of as a child, had grown. Arise. Suho's command fell. Whoosh. Shadow extraction successful. Shadow extraction successful. At his forceful command, new shadow soldiers rose from the corpses of the Outer Gods cult members who had been melted by the statue's beams. Ka! The new soldiers, brought back from death, were truly demonic. They radiated intense hatred for the false god who had exploited and betrayed their blind faith during their lives. All forces charge! Charge! At Suho's command, the shadow army roared in unison and surged towards the statue of Itarim. The stats of shadow soldiers fighting within the caster's shadow are increased by 50%. The monarch's domain amplified their power. Ka! Despicable outer god! I'll crush you! Kim Chul, who had been the most zealous follower in life, now led the charge towards the statue. You're back, Iron! Beru cheered and commanded the battlefield from above Kim Chul, or rather, Iron's head. Rumble! The statue's giant foot mercilessly crushed the shadow soldier's skill Thorn of Pain. Harmon uses skill Damage Amplification. Boom! Suho also unleashed all his power. Skill Iron Body Technique activated. Skill Giant's Armor activated. The Spirit of Pet, Gray possesses the priest's body. Skill Grassland's Wind activated. Movement speed temporarily increased by 30%. Attack speed temporarily increased by 30%. Whoosh! Suho's body grew larger, and his hair, now silver, fluttered like a lion's mane. Huh. Sung Ilwan couldn't help but be surprised by Suho's transformed appearance. When did his small grandson grow so big? Skill Storm Slash activated. Rumble! The storm of blades swirling from Suho's swords was just as powerful as his appearance, fiercely attacking the statue. Rah! Run! As the chapel crumbled, the remaining cult members scattered in panic, and the demons outside were also bewildered. My servants, fight! Whoosh! Their expressions, which had been filled with confusion, changed at the statue's roar. They had long lost their original selves, corrupted by Itarim's divine power, and only their instilled faith remained. The god's command was absolute to them. They rushed back into the collapsing building with blue demonic energy in their eyes and attacked Suho's army. However, the hunters who were innocently using the black market were different. Well, what's that? A moving statue. Their eyes widened at the sight of the giant statue that suddenly emerged from the collapsing chapel. Even though they came here for tax evasion, they were still active hunters. They instinctively channeled their mana and prepared for battle without anyone giving orders. But, flash! The stardust necklaces around their necks suddenly emitted a blue light in response to the statue's presence. The light was faint compared to the star pieces, but it was enough. Gah! Why is the necklace? The stardust necklaces they were wearing were holding them in mid-air like shackles, as if possessed by evil spirits. What is this? Gasp! The hunters struggled in mid-air, desperately trying to remove the necklaces that were strangling them with a strange energy. And then, bang! Blood splattered. The hunter with a gaping hole in his chest had bloodshot eyes. Huang Dongsu nonchalantly pulled his fist out of the body and shook off the blood. Thud! He clasped his hands with a solemn expression as he looked at the person that had just lost his life and collapsed before him. I offer this sacrifice to the great god. Whoosh! At that moment, the mana remaining in the dead hunter's body scattered like light dust, and that power was absorbed by the statue of Itarim as a sacrifice. Gasp! Witnessing the shocking scene, the hunters struggled with all their might to rip off the necklaces. Snap! I did it! Bang! I offer this sacrifice. Another sacrifice was added. Unlike Sung Ilwan, Itarim's divine power completely corrupted Huang Dongsu. His eyes, filled with blue demonic energy, glared at the non-believers who were fiercely fighting the statue of Itarim. Smirk. How dare these blasphemous wretches? He jumped into the battlefield with a ferocious aura, intending to kill all the hunters before him and protect the statue. Flash! Just like Sung Ilwan, blue energy surged from his body. But then, thud! It seems you haven't learned your lesson. Huang Dongsu glared at the white-haired old man, Sung Ilwan, who was blocking his path, and gritted his teeth. Sung Il-wan, don't interfere with my grandson's business. Why don't we old folks play amongst ourselves? Don't be impertinent. I was just careless earlier. Really? Sung Il-wan simply smiled faintly at Hwang Dong-su's enraged shout. Do you really think so? The conversation couldn't continue. Hwang Dong-su lunged at him with all his might. Boom! The S-rank villain who became Itarim's high priest and the S-rank hunter who broke free from the false god with his own will. As their powers clashed, the mana of the outer universe tore through the air. Little monarch, the statue's power grows stronger every time someone dies. As Beru said, the statue of Itarim was absorbing the power of the outer god's cult members and the hunters wearing stardust necklaces whenever they died. Even the cracks and damage it had sustained from the Shadow Army's attacks were rapidly regenerating. This won't end like this, Suho calmly assessed the situation even while fighting. One thing was certain. The giant statue here wasn't the real Itarim. There's no way my father would allow them to come to Earth. In other words, this thing was merely a moving statue with a portion of Itarim's power residing within it. It's probably just an avatar like Arsha, and the fuel that powers it is that blue mana. Suho maximized his senses. Then he saw the flow of mana from the dead converging towards the statue of Itarim. And at the end of that flow, found it. While attacking the statue, he suddenly changed direction and soared upwards. Bang! 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 Suho, running vertically on the statue's massive body, was aiming for its neck. There, a large necklace that seemed like a mere decoration was carved, and the energy of the dead was converging towards it. Zing! The statue, flustered, shot blue beams to stop him and shouted at Hwang Dong-su. High Priest, stop him! But Hwang Dong-su wasn't in a position to follow that solemn command. Boom! Bang! Bang! Sung Il-wan was pinning him down with brute force. Kuh! Blood spurted from Hwang Dong-su's mouth. He hated to admit it, but he had no choice. This white-haired old man who was supposed to be the second high priest after him. He's strong. Overwhelmingly so. Why? We're in the same situation. Despite being helplessly pushed back by Sung Il-wan's power, Hwang Dong-su gritted his teeth in frustration. What was the difference between him and this old geezer? We're both S-rank, and the number of Outer God's jewels implanted in us is the same. Why is there such a difference in strength? You ask the obvious, Sung Il-wan replied calmly, pushing back the enraged Hwang Dong-su. It's the difference in vessels. What nonsense! To Hwang Dong-su, who didn't remember his past life, those words would sound like nothing but nonsense. But from Sung Il-wan's perspective, there was no simpler answer. Even though this man was once an S-rank hunter, and later one of the noble souls who fought to protect the world as a soldier under his son, Sung Jinwoo, the mission bestowed upon him was on a different level. The moment Sung Il-wan raised his fist, it was enveloped in the mana of the outer universe. Hwang Dong-su's eyes widened as if they were about to split at that tremendous power. Whoosh! The primordial light, the fragments of brilliance, now called rulers. They once entrusted their power to Sung Il-wan to stop the Shadow Monarch's advent. But when the situation changed, they gave a new order: protect the Shadow Monarch. And to achieve that goal, the level of mere national-level hunter was absolutely insufficient. Who was the Shadow Monarch? He was the greatest fragment of brilliant light, the strongest of all rulers. And at the same time, he was the king of darkness, the most powerful of all monarchs. To stop him, or to protect him, just how much power do you think was needed? With those words, a fist plunged towards Hwang Dong-su. That's right, Sung Il-wan. He was the most brilliant hunter, who fought a lonely battle, pushing himself to the limit until his body crumbled, with the sole determination to protect his son. And the vessel of his soul, which had experienced that noble yet terrible end and was revived. It's still not enough. The mana of the outer universe? Outer god stones? Such meager power hadn't even filled half of his vessel. Bang! Return in death. That was Hwang Dong-su's last memory. Chapter 194, Chapter 193, Who Am I? Hwang Dong-su's soul, endlessly falling towards the black abyss, the sea of the afterlife, was seeing a whirlwind of his past. Who am I? Flash! The panorama of his life unfolded rapidly before his eyes. Well, it wasn't that impressive a life, even looking back at it this way. He was born into a poor family, abandoned by his only brother for being incompetent. He was lucky enough to become an S-rank villain, but was immediately chased by that damned Choi Jong-in and Woo Jin-chul. And then, he met them. The Outer Gods cult. At first, he thought they were just another multi-level company disguised as a cult. But it turned out they were more than that, with various businesses and a considerable scale. Above all, they possessed ruthlessness, easily disregarding the suffering of others to achieve their goals. But that's what made them trustworthy. He found it easier to deal with those who didn't hide their desires than those who pretended to be virtuous while concealing their true intentions. Besides, Hwang Dong-soo, who was evading the association, needed a lot of intelligence. In that respect, the Outer Gods cult was quite useful, with their excellent information network, so Hwang Dong-soo readily joined hands with them. He would lend his strength, and they would provide him with information. A fair trade where each side gave and received what they needed. Yes, that's how it started. And then I came to Yongpyong. From Hwang Dong-soo's perspective, this mission wasn't particularly difficult. They wanted him to clear a field-type dungeon that had appeared in Yongpyong without anyone knowing. More precisely, to eliminate all the magical beasts there so that the Outer Gods cult could open a black market under the cover of it. It was an extremely simple request, but I was played like a fiddle. Hwang Dong-soo's soul gritted its teeth fiercely. He only came to his senses after dying. He remembered what the Outer Gods cult had done to him. The field-type dungeon in Yongpyong. There was a suspicious magic circle laid out there from the beginning. At the time, he thought it was a characteristic of the dungeon, but in reality, that magic was a trap they had prepared for him. And the moment Hwang Dong-soo stepped inside, he was caught in that magic, like a mantis caught in a spider web. And so, Hwang Dong-soo became the high priest. After that, he sincerely worshipped Itarim and followed their orders without question. Whenever he prayed fervently in the chapel, the Outer Gods Itarim would always bestow grand revelations from somewhere in that great world. Spread the stardust widely, and a great gate will open on this land. Open the gate, and Itarim will come. Itarim will come. To think I was fooled by such nonsense. Hwang Dong-soo's soul couldn't hide its frustration. He could see the sea of the afterlife opening its mouth towards him from far below. He didn't want to go there. Why? Was it because he was angry at being played by the Outer Gods cult? Did he want revenge? No. It was because he realized there was a more fundamental reason, a far more critical mission he had to fulfill. Hwang Dong-soo's soul roared. He struggled with all his might to escape this terrifying sea that was swallowing him, flailing his arms, and he desperately reached out towards the distant sky from which he had fallen. I can't die like this. I will return. At the end of Hwang Dong-soo's desperate gaze, a fierce battle was taking place in that distant sky. Rumble, crash, the statue of Itarim, the giant statue that the Outer Gods cult had created in Itarim's image. An incredibly small human was fighting against that giant monster. Hwang Dong-soo saw his face. He saw his eyes. He witnessed the darkness unfolding from his hands, and he instinctively realized who he was. The moment he realized that crucial truth, he recognized that great darkness, resembling the truly great him, and no Atsum mere Itarim. Kya! Please, save this dying soul of mine. Greed roared. Call my name, Rumble. At that moment, Suho, who was fighting the statue of Itarim, turned his head and saw him. His eyes found Hwang Dong-soo's soul, slowly sinking and disappearing into the sea of the afterlife. He found his desperate hand reaching out. Suho reached out without hesitation and grabbed him. Arise! Greed! Ding! Shadow extraction successful. Greed grabbed his hand and rose from the sea of the afterlife. And with that volcanic momentum, he immediately leaped up and punched the damned statue of Itarim right in the face. Boom! Half of its face exploded and shattered. How dare you betray me? With tremendous murderous intent, the statue's giant hand flew towards Greed and crushed him. Bang! But, how dare you? Greed, who had blocked the statue's giant hand with his strength, slowly emerged from beneath it. Rank General. Trying to play a cheap trick on me, a former member of the Shadow Army? Kick! You're back! Greed! Greed! Beru and Iron cheered, welcoming his return. He also recognized them and his eyes lit up, but this wasn't the time for a leisurely reunion. Everyone, just like Iron, Greed, who had returned as a shadow soldier, instinctively recognized Suho's true identity, and he also understood the role he had to play as the strongest soldier here. Assist the little monarch, I'll take the lead. Whoosh! At that moment, all the shadow soldiers charged towards the statue of Itarim, and all their attacks concentrated on the statue's necklace, which Suho was also attacking. Boom, boom, boom. Stone fragments scattered in all directions, and finally, the statue's necklace cracked. But Greed, who was once Itarim's high priest, knew that the statue's real weakness was hidden inside it. Little monarch, now's the time. That place. Before Greed could finish, Suho was already swinging his sword with all his might, using the iron body technique. The black energy extended a giant black blade from the two Vulcans' horns. Slash! He sliced through the statue's core, which was now exposed. Ding! You have defeated the statue of the outer gods. Level up! Level up! Rumble! Before Suho, who had achieved a tremendous level up, could rejoice, the giant statue began to crumble on the spot, and the impact was directed towards those who remained nearby. Wag! The surviving Outer Gods cult members, demons and ordinary hunters, scattered in panic as stone fragments rained down on them. Protect Grandpa. The fastest to react to Suho's shout was Greed. Mr. Sung Il-hwan, I've come to rescue you. Well, that was a quick change of heart. Sung Il-hwan, who had collapsed on the floor, exhausted after expending all his strength, chuckled and obediently let Greed carry him out of there. Are you all right? You ask even though you know. Cough. Blood trickled from Sung Il-hwan's mouth as he replied with a smile. Seeing this, Greed hurriedly brought him to Suho. Little monarch, quickly, a potion. Suho was startled to see his grandfather's condition and took out a healing potion to feed him. But even after drinking it all, Sung Il-hwan's complexion didn't improve. It was only natural. Even though the statue was destroyed, dozens of star pieces were still implanted in his body. Ki, Grandpa, have another bottle. And this, and this. Suho and Beru frantically took out all the mana potions and detoxification potions and poured them into his mouth. But Sung Il-hwan was simply touched by his grandson's concern. Ha ha, calm down. This old man isn't dead yet, so stop fussing. He stretched leisurely, an ominous blue energy still seeping from his body. Greed. Suho glared at his new soldier, who was once Itarim's high priest, and asked, Tell me everything you know. What's wrong with Grandpa? He must know something, having lived with dozens of star pieces as in his body, just like Sung Il-hwan. Moreover, with all his memories from his past life restored, Greed knew the most among them. Sung Il-hwan's current condition is... Greed's expression turned grave as he looked at the star pieces embedded in Sung Il-hwan's body. Crack, crack. Fine cracks were spreading across his skin, centered around the implanted star pieces. Star pieces are objects that cause dimensional rifts and summon the mana of the outer universe. They're similar to miniature gates. Gates? Suho's eyes widened. You're saying there are dozens of gates open in my grandfather's body right now? Ahem, he said. My grandfather. Sung Il-hwan awkwardly twitched his lips at Suho's words. Although their relationship had been strained for the past few years, it was entirely due to the difference in information they possessed. From Sung Il-hwan's perspective, knowing that Sung Jinwoo was the shadow monarch, he wasn't too worried even when his son suddenly disappeared. But from Suho's perspective, as his son, it was natural to feel resentful towards his grandfather. However, seeing Beru beside him, it seemed those misunderstandings had been cleared up without needing a reconciliation. Seeing his grandson fussing over him after a long time wasn't unpleasant. Ahem, don't worry too much. I know my own body well. Sung Il-hwan suppressed his proud grin and patted Suho's back with a solemn expression. Then, he turned his gaze towards the gate he had emerged from. Suho, let's go inside for now. Huh? Into the dungeon? Yes. Finally, Suho's gaze followed Sung Il-hwan's and landed on the gate. Chapter 195, Chapter 194. The gate Sung Il-hwan emerged from. It looked quite different from the gates Suho had seen so far. Typically, they were basically round in shape. Of course, their sizes could vary, or their shapes could be distorted, but they all fundamentally took the form of a hole punched in the air. On the other hand, The gate Sung Ilwan came out of was a rift itself. It was as if the dimensional wall was haphazardly torn and tattered, fluctuating unstably. That appearance, it's exactly like the sky I saw in the Glacier Dungeon. The sky of the Glacier Dungeon, where countless rifts were entangled and tore the dimensional wall to shreds. Suho thought it resembled the scenery there, although on a much smaller scale. Be aware, what lies beyond this is not an ordinary dungeon. Sung Ilwan walked towards the gate side by side with Suho, muttering with a serious expression. At his words, Greed, the former high priest of Itarim, and Iron, the ordinary priest, following behind, added their own information. Little Monarch, several field-type dungeons have been intentionally left unattended in Yangpyeong. Those field-type dungeons gradually expanded their territories and eventually merged into one. As a result, the rifts became more distorted and the dimensional wall got torn even more severely. Like this. This phenomenon was called convergence of rifts, or acceleration of rifts. But there was no need for such difficult terms. Beru, the childhood tutor of Suho, explained it very easily. It's a simple principle. If you consider a single gate as a dot, when two gates connect, they become a line, and when three or more gates connect, rumble, they become a plane like this. Beru muttered, his eyes narrowed as he looked at the gate right in front of him, and when Itarim's meddling is added to the mix, it seems that a gate leading to the void is artificially created. Void? Yes, the gap between dimensions. Dungeon referred to a world in a different dimension, separate from Earth. Gate meant the passage connecting those two dimensions. And void literally meant the gap existing between those dimensions. It's a space of nothingness where anything can exist. In other words, the world where Sung Jinwoo wandered with the Shadow Army in search of the monarchs existed beyond this gate. That's why even the Outer Gods cult called this phenomenon void. The ultimate goal of the Itarim is to spread these void gates throughout Earth and ultimately create a supermassive rift directly connected to the outer universe where they are. Having turned the former high priest and priests into soldiers, internal information was pouring out smoothly. The reason why the Outer Gods cult built their chapel here is also because they need to create the statue near this void gate to connect Itarim's consciousness. Wait a minute. Essel, who had been listening to their conversation, suddenly grabbed Sung Ilwan's clothes from behind with a serious expression. Then you're saying Itarim might be inside this gate? Is it okay to go in like this without any preparation? At Essel's concern, Sung Ilwan smiled warmly and patted her head. That's not the case. I've already been inside once. Just 3 or 4 dungeons merging won't reach the outer universe. If that were the case, Itarim would have invaded long ago. Cough. Blood spurted from Sung Ilwan's mouth again, and Suho, having heard all the explanations, finally realized what was happening to his grandfather. If 1 star piece was a dot, 2 were a line, and 3 or more. No, with dozens of star pieces embedded in his body, a void was occurring within Sung Ilwan right now. So a void gate is about to appear in Grandpa's body. Haha, yes, you understand quickly. It's like a walking gate. If this continues, my body will eventually be torn apart and create a dimensional rift. Let's go in quickly. Suho stepped into the gate with a grim expression. It was only a temporary measure, but there was only one thing they could do for now. To prevent a dimensional rift from occurring in his body, they had to enter the dimensional rift itself. Whoosh! They passed through the ominously glowing gate and entered the void. And soon a grotesquely distorted world unfolded before them. A wide-open horizon could be seen in the distance, and the ground was filled with a chaotic jumble of flickering images. This was the gap between dimensions, the void. Beru. Suho called out, observing this bizarre world. Is this the place where my father wandered for decades? Indeed, to reach the dimensions of the monarchs, like the tomb of berserk dragons, we had to wander through this place aimlessly, searching for the way. Beru nodded heavily, recalling those times at Suho's melancholic words. Looking back, that journey was truly long and daunting. The monarch once described it as wandering through a desert. A desert. Suho was speechless at the weight of those words. Sung Ilwan also clenched his lips and muttered, "Yes, this is where our Jinwoo." This empty world where Sung Jinwoo, his only son, wandered for decades with the mission to protect the world. The emotions he felt as a father, witnessing this place so late, were indescribable. But regardless of his feelings, thankfully, the ominous cracks that had been flickering on Sung Il-hwan's body stabilized the moment they entered this place. Greed, who was in the same situation, was greatly relieved and explained, "This is why it's safer for the high priests of the Outer Gods cult to stay within this place. Short trips outside are fine, but after excessively using the power of the star pieces like earlier, they need to return here quickly, or their bodies might shatter." At those words, Suho checked Sung Il-hwan's complexion again. "Grandpa, are you feeling better now?" "Yes, I'm fine." Sung Il-hwan, who had seemed on the verge of collapse, was now in good condition. The effects of diligently making him drink potions were finally showing. However, this means he will have to remain trapped inside here from now on. Beru looked at Sung Il-hwan with a gloomy expression and teary eyes. Suho looked at Greed and Iron and asked, "Is there no way to remove the star pieces from his body? It would be extremely dangerous. It might be possible with one, but the high priest level has star pieces all over their body. Then, how about having him stay in my shadow? The shadow world is also a dungeon. For safety, it's best for him to stay within the void." Suho's expression turned grim as he realized all options led to the same conclusion. To lighten the mood, Sung Il-hwan forced a hearty laugh and patted Suho's back. "Haha, don't overthink it. Jinwoo wandered here for decades, so it wouldn't be bad to spend some time here, right? Think of it as exploring this place. The problem is that your grandmother will worry too much, but since it's possible to go out for a short time as long as you don't use mana, that's not a problem either. Speaking of which, I need to go out for a bit." Grandma." Suho suddenly remembered his grandmother and aunt, who were still anxiously waiting at the association. "Dear Dad." When they returned to the Yangpyeong branch together, many people were waiting for them. First, Suho's grandmother and aunt tearfully embraced Sung Il-hwan. Suho turned his gaze to the association hunters behind them, who were practically preparing for war. "Hunter Sung Suho, welcome back." Team leader Han Jae-hyuk had gathered all the association forces he could mobilize to attack the black market. He approached with a burning fighting spirit. "We've already interrogated the Yangpyeong branch manager and grasped the whole situation. Will you join us? You're always a step behind." "Thank you. What? It's already over." What do you mean? I killed those who deserved to die and captured the rest." Suho felt a bit awkward at team leader Han Jae-hyuk's bewildered expression. On his way back, he had killed all the demons in the black market to gain experience. And the hunters who were using the black market were arrested by the association hunters. Since they were caught for tax evasion rather than being villains, team leader Han Jae-hyuk said they would only face hefty fines. But the disposal of the most crucial items from this incident remained. The association has decided to confiscate all the stardust necklaces sold up for sale. The same goes for the star pieces found in the black market. Then what will happen to them? The association is also partly responsible for this incident. Well, the chairman is still in North Korea, so the specific plan. The chairman, Shiver, team leader. Han Jae-hyuk suddenly felt a chill. How far can I trust the association? He felt as if he was falling into a bottomless darkness as he met Suho's black eyes. But was it just his imagination? The thick and heavy air suddenly lightened, and Suho smiled at team leader Han Jae-hyuk. "How about this? Yes, the association has lost trust due to this incident, and I've taken care of the black market, so I'll take all the star pieces, and the confiscated stardust necklaces as well." "Well, that's a bit... For your information, this isn't a suggestion." Team leader Han Jae-hyuk was speechless at the quiet pressure. Suho received all the star pieces and stardust necklaces that had been spread across the country from the association. So what are you going to do with them? At Beru's question, Suho immediately opened the shop. "I'm going to sell them all for gold." Keek, such a good idea. Suho's wisdom greatly impressed him, but that wasn't the end of the plan. Since the amount of star pieces and stardust necklaces was considerable, the shop gold, which had been almost depleted, quickly accumulated, and Suho used these funds to purchase a large quantity of potions. Mana potions, to be exact. Keek? Not healing potions. Beru looked puzzled. He had expected Suho to find a way to improve Sung Il-wan's condition right away, but he was suddenly buying mana potions. Potions aren't enough. He had already experimented with removing the star pieces embedded in the foreheads of the demons in the black market to see if they could survive. The results were all failures. They all died with their heads cracked open. In other words, potions couldn't save Sung Il-wan. I need to create the holy water of life. Beru's eyes widened at those words. Suho recalled the ingredients for the holy water of life. Spring water from the Echo Forest. Fragment of the World Tree. Purified blood of the Demon King. He had asked the deceased monarchs about the fragment of the World Tree before, and their answers were all the same. The King of Beasts, the Monarch of Fangs, shrugs. The Queen of Insects, the Monarch of Pestilence, tilts her head with a thoughtful expression. The King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost says that if there's anyone who knows the location of the World Tree, it would be. That one person was the King of Demonic Specters, the Monarch of Transfiguration. Only Yogamant, the Monarch of Transfiguration, who could freely open gates and travel between dimensions, would know its location. But he couldn't think of a way to ask that deceased monarch either. Just as he was feeling lost, a thought crossed Suho's mind. The final battle. The strongest monarch who Sung Jinwoo fought against until the very end, the Dragon Emperor. What was the reason why Antares could fight Sung Jinwoo until the very last moment? Wasn't it because the Monarch of Transfiguration cooperated with him and opened countless gates for the Dragon Emperor's army? Therefore, the Dragon Emperor might know something. Whoosh, entering the Shadow Dungeon. Thump. Suho picked up Kamish's egg, which was stored in a corner of the pyramid. He placed a massive amount of mana potions beside it, put one in his mouth, and muttered with a meaningful expressi, "I'll hatch this thing today, no matter what." Whoosh! And so, a tremendous amount of mana began to be poured into Kamish's egg, endlessly. Chapter 196, Chapter 195, Ominous, Ominous. Queen Bee Arsha was watching Suho's actions from a distance with a very anxious look. Rumble, rumble, the pyramid was making an ominous vibrating sound due to the endless surge of mana from Suho. On the other hand, Amut, the owner of the place, was watching all this with interest. I wonder if a dragon egg can really hatch with such a makeshift method? Of course, it wasn't theoretically impossible, but it was unclear whether a normal dragon could be born this way. For one thing, the egg itself was too small compared to a normal one. Originally, it should have received a mana shower from its parents for a long time and grown 10 times its current size. But because the father, Kamish, died early, it remained in an immature state. However, perhaps because it was Suho, who wasn't a dragon himself, giving it a mana shower, the egg itself showed no signs of growing. Perhaps even if it hatches, it will be premature or stillborn. At Arsha's words, Beru, who was munching on a pile of magic stones secretly pilfered from the black market, scoffed. Kiha, how ridiculous! How can a mere dragon compare to the noble bloodline of our Suho? He should be honored to be fed mana by the little monarch himself, instead of receiving it from a lowly dragon. I'll just keep my mouth shut. Sighed Arsha. Amut ignored Beru and approached Suho for his daily quest. Now, hatching the egg is important, but first, do your training for today, and then continue. Ah, is it already the time? Suho got up without a word, but Kamish's egg was still in his hand. Amut chuckled at the sight. You're not planning to keep holding that during training, are you? Of course I am. My grandfather's health is at stake. I don't want to waste any time. Even as he answered, Suho was still pouring mana into Kamish's egg. Amut's lips curled upwards at his dedication. Good, then do your push-ups with one arm today. It can't be helped. Suho wrapped bandages around his body like a mummy without a word, and Amut chuckled with an even more satisfied expression. How wise! Let's start with a broken arm today. Crack! As soon as he finished speaking and started doing push-ups, the refreshing sound of bones breaking was heard from Suho's arm. But he only frowned slightly and continued exercising. With his other hand, he continuously poured mana into Kamish's egg. They're all crazy. Arsha watched this extreme training relationship from a distance with a tired expression. Whoosh! Meanwhile, Kamish's egg, brimming with an ominous aura, was slowly awaiting the time to hatch. Thus, a day passed, then 2 days, then the third day. Despite Suho's bold claim that he would finish it in a day, it still showed no signs of hatching. It was impossible to finish in a day what took dragons years. But he was desperate, with Sung Ilwan's well-being on the line. He had been relentlessly struggling with Kamish's egg for 3 days without sleep. Our Suho is going through so much because of his useless grandfather. Sung Ilwan, who had briefly visited the shadow dungeon out of concern for his grandson, muttered with a bitter expression. But even as he spoke, signs of rifts were slowly starting to appear on his body, if he didn't return to the void soon before it became more dangerous. Crack! And then, huh? Oh, Kwang! Everyone's eyes widened. Finally, Kamish's egg was showing signs of hatching. The king of beasts, the monarch of fangs, perks up his ears. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues folds her arms and watches. The king of the snowfolk and the monarch of frost. The hatching of Kamish's egg was a matter of great interest even to the deceased monarchs. It was only natural. This was the descendant of the dragon king, the monarch of destruction, Antares. Excluding the shadow monarch, who was an anomaly in many ways, this was the moment of the birth of the successor to the power of Antares, the undisputed strongest monarch. Keek, little monarch, you have to push harder now. Encouraged by Beru's cheers, Suho put another mana potion in his mouth and poured all his strength into it. And finally, crack, crack, crack! The egg cracked, and a small lizard peeked its head out. Oh, it's born. It's really born. In the end, everyone cheered at the same time. Only Arsha closed her eyes tightly and sighed. It's finally born. In the end, that dangerous creature was born on this land. And indeed, the creature reflected in Arsha's eyes was truly terrifying. Short black horns protruding from its head, an elongated round body and tail resembling a lizard, short limbs attached to its sides with blunt black claws and small wings. It was undeniably a dragon hatchling, just smaller in size. But for some reason, the creature just stared blankly into the air after hatching. Could it be blind? Suho was worried. It wasn't born under normal circumstances, so he couldn't help but worry, but his concerns were unfounded. Blink! Suddenly, the creature came to its senses, eyes opened wide and looked forward, and its sight met Suho's, who was holding it in his hands. Blink! The creature blinked its round eyes, smiled brightly at Suho, and opened its mouth. Beep! Ding! Red Dragon 1 acquired. Ah! The pet system was activated after a long time, and a name tag appeared above the baby dragon's head. Oh, it became a pet right away? Is it because it was born by consuming my mana? Suho muttered as he saw the system message that appeared before his eyes. Come to think of it, it's similar to Gray. Ding! You can name your pet. Please name your pet. A name, huh? While Suho was pondering a name, a growling sound suddenly came from beside him. Growl! Was it instinctive rivalry? Gray, his first pet, suddenly started barking fiercely at the baby dragon. Growl! Grr! The way he wrinkled his nose and bared his teeth was quite menacing. The king of beasts, the Fang monarch, nods in satisfaction at his successor's valiant appearance. But it was only for a moment. Tilt? Beep? The baby dragon's head turned to Gray at the sudden noise. Gray closed his mouth and lowered his gaze with an expressionless face, as if nothing had happened. Beep? The baby dragon tilted its head, looking puzzled, but the wolf cub, for some reason, maintained a solemn expression and didn't raise his head. But as soon as the baby dragon turned its head back to Suho, Gray's expression instantly turned ferocious, and he started growling again. Grr! Beep! Of course, when the baby dragon looked back at him, Gray quickly calmed down, closed his mouth, and lowered his eyes. An amazing transformation. He didn't forget to tuck his tail under his hind legs either. The deceased monarchs had mixed reactions to this sight. The king of beasts, the monarch of fangs, sigh softly. The king of the snowfolk and the monarch of frost bursts into laughter. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues laughs hysterically. Suho couldn't help but laugh as well, despite feeling sorry for his first pet. It seems he's higher in the pecking order than Gray. That's only natural. Even if it was born abnormally and is small, a dragon is still a dragon. Kya! Swish! Grab! And then Arsha, who was answering Suho's question, was suddenly snatched away by something like a whip. Save me. The culprit was the baby dragon. Arsha's desperate screams gradually faded as he chewed. It was an accident that happened in an instant, but before Suho could worry, the queen bee reappeared behind him, unharmed. Phew, don't worry. Thankfully, it was just an avatar. Swish, grab. And once again, the baby dragon snatched Arsha with its long tongue and swallowed her. Beep! He then smiled brightly at Suho, who couldn't help but chuckle. The deceased monarchs had mixed reactions again. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues, Kova, arse her face and can't lift her head. The king of the snowfolk and the monarch of frost bursts into laughter. Honestly, it's like a frog despite behaving like a true apex predator. Suho grinned and decided on the creature's name. Then I'll just name it Frog or Froggy. No, wait, Suho. Sung Jinwoo, who had grabbed Suho's shoulder, said with a serious expression. Considering we need to ask the Dragon King for a favor, wouldn't it be better to choose his successor's name carefully? Ah, you're right, Grandpa. Then, Sung Jinwoo breathed a sigh of relief. After all, his life was on the line. Suho thought about it again and recalled a character's name from a game he used to play. That character was also a monarch who controlled fire, so it seemed appropriate for a red dragon. Ragnarok. No, let's shorten it to Ragnar. Ding! As soon as he decided on the name, a new notification appeared above the baby dragon's head, who was sitting quietly on Suho's hand, rolling its eyes, waiting for Arsha to approach again. Yes, that's much better than frog. Sung Jinwoo nodded in relief. But then, whoosh! The moment Ragnar was named, black-red flames suddenly ignited all over his body in Suho's hand. Beep! Ragnar let out a long cry towards Suho. Ding! Passive skill, unknown, activated. Suho's eyes widened as he felt time seemingly stop. The plan was successful. To think he could meet the deceased Dragon King right away like this. But something was strange. Whoosh! Ugh! A terrible scream erupted from Suho's mouth. This time, it was somehow very different from the other monarchs. Whoosh! Cog! It was hot! So hot! As if he had swallowed boiling oil. An intense burning pain started from his throat and spread through his blood vessels, setting his entire body on fire. Kya! Suho's shadow bubbled and boiled, turning into pitch-black flames that started to burn his entire body. In that excruciating pain, his consciousness was gradually sucked into the distant darkness. And then, rumble at the end of the deep, deep abyss. In the empty, black and white world that swallowed even light, Suho finally faced him, a man sitting atop a giant dragon's head. This is the Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, Antares. He scanned Suho's entire body with an arrogant gaze. And then, you. Sensing a familiar energy from Suho, the Dragon King suddenly grinned, revealing his teeth in a ferocious expression. You're the son of the Shadow Monarch. Rumble, rumble, rumble. At that moment, a murderous intent hotter and more ferocious than boiling lava engulfed Suho. Chapter 197, Chapter 196. A suffocating heat surged forward, and many warning messages assaulted his senses. Ring, ring, ring. The King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction is watching you. The King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction is hostile towards you. The King of Dragons of Destruction. Potions and the shop cannot be used in this location, and your condition will not recover even if you level up. A sense of urgency could be felt from the system messages that appeared one after another. A crisis had befallen without warning. I didn't expect it to be easy. Suho gritted his teeth and glared at the giant, burning mountain that filled his vision. If boiling lava were to gain life and take the form of a dragon, would it look like this? That colossal blazing form was the true image of the Dragon King, Antares. How dare you? The offspring of the one who defied me appears before me on his own accord. Even though he merely muttered in a low voice, an immense pressure seemed to weigh down on Suho's entire body. The Dragon King, Antares. His father's true nemesis, who had waged a fierce war against the Shadow Army longer than any other monarch. Indeed, he possessed an overwhelming power, surpassing anybody Suho had encountered so far. The King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction uses skill, Breath of Destruction. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A crimson waterfall of flames poured down on Suho like a whip. Ruler's authority. Suho flew upwards at his maximum speed and evaded the attack. The flames that erased everything, the terrifying white light narrowly grazed his head. Swish! At the same time, two swords, the Vulcan's horns, appeared in Suho's hands. Skill Storm Slash activated. Slash! Slash! A fierce storm of blades swirled, attacking the dragon's body as it breathed out destruction. Useless. Do you think those swords made from a demon's horns can even scratch me? The Dragon King mocked Suho and roared towards him, opening its giant maw. The King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction uses skill, Dragon Fear. Suho felt an indescribable fear at the intangible energy emitted by Antares, the ruler of dragons. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The earth trembled and the sky shook. No, it was Suho himself who was truly trembling. Ring, debuff fear activated. All stats are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. Ugh! Overwhelming. There was no other way to describe it. Suho saw his hands holding the Vulcan's horns tremble. The pressure was on a completely different level compared to when he fought Quretia. But, so what? So what if he was overwhelmed? His opponent was the loser who knelt before his father. Wouldn't it be a disgrace to his name to back down in fear? I'll endure. Suho clenched his trembling jaw and forced a grin. He barely resisted the fear instilled by Dragon Fear and spoke. Are you all watching? There were those who answered him. The King of Beasts and the Monarch of Fangs is watching you. The Queen of Insects and the Monarch of Plagues is watching you. The King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost is watching you. The gazes of the other monarchs who had bestowed their blessings upon Suho poured towards him. Oh, it wasn't just Suho who felt those gazes. The Dragon King raised an eyebrow in interest. Whoosh! Suddenly silver dust scattered around Suho, and the phantoms of the deceased monarchs appeared. Under their gazes, the Dragon King smirked and asked, What trick did you use? You've cleverly brought the other monarchs to your side. I am their priest. Suho answered, Priest? Yes. You'll also need a successor to inherit your power, won't you? The Dragon King laughed scornfully at those words. A successor to inherit my power? You're not suggesting that fool you hatched as my successor, are you? Fool? Something was strange. The Dragon King was genuinely mocking Suho's suggestion. Hatching Kamish's egg with a human's meager mana is impressive. But so what? Do you really think a creature that has become someone's pet is worthy of inheriting the power of the Dragon King? Antares already knew everything. But the fact that the hatchling of Kamish, who was only born thanks to Suho's mana, became his pet infuriated him the most. That's why he couldn't suppress his rage, and at the same time, he felt an immense shame at the weakness of the baby dragon, who had become a mere human's pet right after birth. The arrogant Dragon King's pride erupted into a giant flame and spewed towards Suho. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Child of Shadow, you shall burn and suffer eternally in this place. Whoosh! At that moment, the entire world turned into boiling lava which swallowed everything. This was Antares' domain. If he wished, he could turn this entire space into a burning inferno, and Suho would have no way to escape the flames. All he could do was writhe and scream in the excruciating burning pain. The other monarchs hurriedly bestowed their blessings to save him. The spirit of Pet, Gray, possesses the priest's body. Whoosh! Suho's hair turned silver, and a divine wind enveloped him. Skill, Blizzard of Frost. The Monarch of Frost summoned a blizzard to counter Antares' flames. The Queen of Insects and the Monarch of Plagues uses debuff, paralyzing poison, to alleviate your pain. Quretia also tried to protect Suho in her own way. After all, Suho was their priest, so they had to prevent him from burning to death. But get lost, you spineless fools. Whoosh! All those blessings were burned away by Antares' roar, as if they were nothing. His fury was directed not only at Suho, but also at the other monarchs beside him. Those who should reign above choose to submit. You are no longer worthy of the title of monarch. Crackle! His inferno repelled the grassland's wind, and even melted the blizzard. The phantoms of the monarchs, who were trying to help, scattered and disappeared like mirages. Ah! With all help gone, Suho was left falling into the flames. Antares was pouring out, completely exposed. His resilience skill, it only increased physical defense, so it was useless in this situation. His HP plummeted relentlessly, and since the use of potions was prohibited, the situation was truly desperate with no hope in sight. But then, thud. At some point, screams stopped coming from Suho's mouth, buried in that inferno. Huh, A glint of surprise flickered in Antares' eyes. Thud, thud, step by step. Suho was walking through the flames, slowly approaching the Dragon King. Of course, the pain was still there. His whole body was so hot that it felt like his heart would stop at any moment. Nevertheless, it can't be helped. Change of plans. Suho gritted his teeth with a stubborn expression, forcibly suppressing his screams, and raised his fist. I'll kill you before I die. Huh? A scoff escaped Antares' lips at those ridiculous words. Skill Giant's Armor activated. Skill Iron Body Technique activated. Whoosh! Suho's body grew larger as he channeled the black aura with all his might. Boom! His fist landed, and Antares' massive body staggered. For the first time, a look of bewilderment crossed the Dragon King's eyes. But it was only for a moment. Then he laughed heartily. Ah, ha, ha, ha! He, who was riding atop the giant dragon in human form, clutched his forehead and started chuckling. His laughter seemed to carry mana, making Suho's heart pound with every burst. But suddenly his laughter ceased. Antares' vertically slit pupils gleamed ominously, and he looked down at Suho with an arrogant smile. An expression as if he had finally found an interesting toy. How amusing. Entertain me more. The giant dragon's maw opened to devour the toy. Crunch. Suho was swallowed in one bite. Ugh, he barely managed to support himself with his arms and legs spread wide within that giant maw. But he succeeded in breaking one of Antares' fangs. Crack! Oh, would dare this insect, huh? Seemingly pleased with that term, Suho grinned and said, how about calling me vermin instead? Crack! He mercilessly stomped on the Dragon King's broken fang, infusing numerous poisons into his attack. Debuff, paralyzing poison activated. Buff, Kasaka's venom activated. How dare you? Vermin indeed. Suho, with a ferocious expression, repeatedly struck the roof of the dragon's mouth. Boom, bang, 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 bang. The King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction uses skill, Breath of Destruction. Whoosh! Terrible flame erupted from Antares' throat. It instantly burned away the poison and scorched Suho's body black. But I'm not dead yet. Crack? Even in that excruciating pain, he managed to break another fang, and using that as a weapon, he chose to jump into the dragon's throat instead of dodging the attack. We mercilessly thrusted the fang into the gap, and the breath of destruction flowing through the throat exploded. Boom! Antares thrashed his head from side to side, struggling. The shock of the breath of destruction exploding within his own body was far greater than he had imagined. But Suho didn't stop there. He raised his fist and repeatedly hammered the embedded fang like a nail. Bang, 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 boom! He punched a hole in the giant dragon's neck and forcibly tore it open with both hands. Rip! Antares' neck split open as if cut by a sword, and dragon blood gushed out like a fountain. The screams echoing through the sky were incredibly satisfying, but he knew he couldn't defeat Antares with just this level of attack. Suho was also at his limit. His consciousness was fading, as if he would pass out any time. At that critical moment, a thought suddenly occurred to Suho. Dragon King, I have another idea. I don't need a priest anymore. Whether Antares listened or not, Suho spoke his mind. I will become your successor. He stood firm. What? Antares, writhing in anger and pain, couldn't believe his ears. You said Ragnar isn't qualified to be the Dragon King because he's my pet? Then how about me? If the meaning of Dragon King is the master of dragons, I have one as my pet. Yes, this insanely powerful monarch's power. He had witnessed it firsthand. How could he not be tempted? I will become the monarch of destruction. Chapter 198, Chapter 197. At Suho's exclamation, Antares fell silent for a moment. Huh! A snort finally erupted from his mouth. His crazed laughter shook the heavens and earth. Did you just say you would become the monarch of destruction? A mere human, not even a dragon, dares to? Roar, Antares. He was the true monarch of destruction, who enjoyed bloody battles and felt complete ecstasy only on the battlefield. He had thought he would never be able to fight again, trapped in the distant realm of death, so he intended to savor this long-awaited battle. But at this moment, all the excitement vanished because of the arrogant words uttered by this insignificant vermin. Perish, child of shadow. Destruction descended in an instant. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Ugh! The giant dragon's form, bleeding from Suho's attacks, transformed into bubbling lava and swallowed him. as if all the previous battles were mere child's play. An insurmountable killing intent sought Suho's annihilation. But then, indeed, Suho. A voice, like a gentle breeze, came from somewhere far away. I understand your intentions. The calm yet deeply moving tone brought tears to his eyes. This is... Antares was even more surprised than Suho. And then there was light. Flash! Ah! At the same time, the flames burning Suho's body began to die down. All the inferno in his vision began to crumble, and what replaced it was pure darkness. So that's it! It was you all along. Antares, sensing something from the sudden turn of events, burst into laughter like a madman. It was a laughter filled with relief, welcome, and extreme rage all at once. And then, whoosh! In that place where all the heat subsided and darkness descended, Suho stood on both feet in the midst of the pitch-black abyss. And Antares, transformed into his human form, descended before him. Yes, I thought something was strange from the beginning. His arrogant gaze calmly scanned Suho's figure. A miserable sight, charred black by the breath of destruction. Indeed, Suho's body had been no different from a corpse for a while now. It was a wonder he could even stand on his legs. But nevertheless, Suho's eyes, meeting Antares' gaze head-on, were still burning like an inextinguishable flame. Antares, however, was seeing something completely different beyond Suho's defiant stare. The familiar presence of the shadow cast long behind those eyes, reminiscent of him. Even though I'm just a deceased spirit, there's no way this brat's power could reach me. Antares clicked his tongue and shouted towards him, Stop hiding and come out! Flash! As soon as the Dragon King finished speaking, Suho's eyes widened at the sight of the inventory window opening before him on its own. One of the items quietly stored inside started to glow and popped out. Flash! Acquisition. A gem made by compressing a demon's soul. Javier's Soul Stone, the unidentified item left behind by Javier in Hyundai, Busan. And this thing, just in case, keep it in your inventory. Was the item Sung Jinwoo's phantom left with Suho before disappearing? Just in case? Yes, seeing you fight I'm a bit concerned. Ding! Javier's Soul Stone. Whoosh! Ah! Suho saw it. The magic circle invented by the demonic spirit spreading from Javier's Soul Stone, the black energy emanating from it. That energy gathered into one, and thud, he appeared once again. The moment Suho saw that firm and solid back, his eyes widened in shock. Father? You've done well. You endured. Sung Jinwoo's phantom turned his head slightly and looked at Suho with a faint smile on his lips. What he saw was Suho's HP bar. Just one. Suho's HP had stubbornly remained at 1 for a while now, refusing to drop any further. It was thanks to the magic engraved into Javier's Soul Stone. The Sung Jinwoo who appeared here was merely a phantom from memories, not his true self, so he couldn't exert any real influence on reality. But it was different in a place like this. It seemed squeezing the demon's soul to its limit was worth it. Sung Jinwoo's phantom had infused his last remaining essence, which was scattering in Busan, into Javier's Soul Stone. His gaze, after checking Suho's condition, turned forward again, and the moment his eyes met Antares, they flashed ominously. Yes, I knew you'd do something like this. It's been a while. Have you been well? Antares spoke with a calm smile on his face, but his eyes were overflowing with a more ferocious energy than ever before, as if he would attack at any moment. Sung Jinwoo knew the Dragon King's personality better than anyone. That's why he couldn't help but worry about his son, Suho, who claimed to be the priest of the deceased monarchs. Not many were aware of the fact that Antares was a ruthless battle maniac who only communicated through violence. His only interests were fighting and annihilating his enemies. As befitting the name Monarch of Destruction, he was a being who truly sought nothing but destruction. I briefly fought your son, and he was pathetic. Has the comfortable peace dulled the Shadow Monarch's blood? He struggled quite a bit, though. It must have been your influence. Did you learn the magic of the demonic spirits? Since when did the Shadow Monarch resort to such petty tricks? Well, raising children is always a continuous learning experience. Sung Jinwoo shrugged and spread his hands. But thank you. Because of you, I gained something useful. What? A new magic circle unfolded on his palms. Flash! Flash! As it spun, a system message arrived before Suho. Title: Overcomer of Adversity acquired. This is Overcomer of Adversity, a title given to those who have overcome adversity magnificently. Stats increase in proportion to lost HP. 1% stat increase per 1% HP lost. A buff that increases stats as HP decreases. This was a title Sung Jinwoo had acquired long ago when he cleared his job change quest. But it was different for Suho. No matter how much he leveled up, he couldn't receive job change quests, so it was an achievement he could never obtain. However, if he met the conditions like this, it wasn't difficult for Sung Jinwoo to manipulate the system and grant it to him directly. Whoosh! The moment the title's effect was applied, Suho's body, which had been on the verge of death, suddenly overflowed with power. What are you doing? Antares frowned at Sung Jinwoo's sudden action. He wanted to have a good fight with him since they met after a long time, but it was impossible. Sung Jinwoo was merely a phantom. Moreover, it was a phantom surrounded by the magic of the demonic spirits race, which specialized in manipulating souls, so a proper battle was out of the question. Especially in this world of death, his existence was practically cheating. Father? Finally regaining his senses with the newfound strength, Suho blinked and looked at his father. Sung Jinwoo reached out and ruffled his son's hair, then answered Antares' question. What else? Just some career counseling. Sung Jinwoo's face, with a faint smile, was full of affection as he looked at his son. My son has finally decided on his own path, so shouldn't I help him out a bit as a father? Flash! Sung Jinwoo placed his hand on Suho's head as if giving a baptism and cast a spell. Then he asked, Suho, did you know? The original purpose of the level-up system was to develop the human body into a vessel for a monarch. In my case, it was the Shadow Monarch. But it's entirely possible to replace that with another monarch. However, Suho knew what his father was trying to say. That process won't be easy. Even today, I wouldn't have been able to guarantee the outcome if I wasn't here. Are you sure about this? Do you still want to become the monarch of destruction? Yes. Suho swallowed nervously and nodded resolutely at his father's concerned gaze. And I had to meet the Dragon King anyway to ask about the location of the World Tree. The World Tree? Are you trying to make the holy water of life? Why all of a sudden? Sung Jinwoo could infer a lot just by hearing the words World Tree. But Suho's answer surprised even him. Grandpa is in danger. Sung Jinwoo's face hardened as he listened to Suho's explanation. Then, he made a determined expression and manipulated the magic circle he was engraving on Suho's head. I understand. Then, it would be best to do this. And the job change quest. Wait a minute. You too. Hold on. This is more important right now. Antares, who had been listening to the conversation between father and son from behind, frowned at the strange turn of events. What about my opinion? Antares. Sung Jinwoo, having completed the magic circle, turned to the Dragon King and said, I know my son's vessel is far too inadequate to inherit your power. He's not even a dragon. So I have a proposition. A proposition? Yes, you must be bored being dead, so don't you want to go on a rampage outside? What do you mean? Antares frowned at Sung Jinwoo's words, but the Shadow Monarch knew Antares' personality better than anyone, the true embodiment of destruction. He was a ruthless maniac who felt the joy of life only in bloody battles, so he could be sure that Antares wouldn't refuse his offer. Sung Jinwoo extended his hand to the Dragon King and made an irresistible proposal. Ragnar, I'll give you the body of the dragon who is my son's pet. Come back to life, Antares. At that moment, the contract was made. Ding! Job change quest arrived. Chapter 199. Chapter 198. Whoosh! Suho! Little Monarch! Time, which had stopped, started moving again. Suho, suddenly thrown back into reality, saw people rushing towards him with worried expressions. His grandfather, Beru, and even Amut were looking at him with a bewildered expression. It was no wonder. Crimson flames were suddenly surging from Suho's entire body. It turned out that it wasn't just an illusion visible only to him, but actual flames caused by Antares. Whoosh! Ugh! Suho collapsed on the spot in excruciating pain. The flames covering his body soon turned into smoke and died down, but Suho's HP was still close to 0. But since this was reality, there was a way to change that. Accept health recovery. Flash, Suho, who had been near death, instantly recovered as if he had leveled up. Suho, are you all right? Ha, yes, I'm fine. He got up with Sung Ilwan's help and patted his chest. It's a good thing I saved the daily quest reward. It was a close call. Thanks to recently recovering from the after effects of iron body training with bandages and potions, he still had a reward left. Aren't you pushing yourself too hard these days? No, I just met with the Dragon King. Keek? You met the Dragon King? Potions. Have some more potions. Ah, I'm fine now. Beru frantically checked on Suho, circling him. On the other hand, Arsha had already run away as soon as she heard the word Dragon King, and Amit was staring intently at Suho with an intrigued gaze. He was a mess. Even though his health had recovered, the clothes Suho was wearing were burned to rags by the flames of destruction. Amit grinned, baring his teeth. Krr. If you faced the Dragon King, it's a miracle you returned alive. So did he tell you the location of the World Tree? Ah, the World Tree. Suho smiled bitterly, recalling his father's words in the Dragon King's world of rest. Suho, I can tell you the location of the World Tree, but the path there won't be easy. It wasn't just Antares who wandered through the dimensional gaps while fighting. Sung Jinwoo did the same, but even though he knew the location of the World Tree, he couldn't easily tell Suho the shortcut. Standing before the World Tree at your present level would be perilous, so focus on growing stronger for now. In the past, Sung Jinwoo had obtained the fragment of the World Tree as a reward for hunting Vulcan in the Demon Castle. But that was entirely due to the system's arrangement, and it was impossible for Suho to use that method now. In the end, he had to find the real World Tree with his own strength, not just a fragment. Antares will tell you the rest. With those words, Sung Jinwoo manipulated the system and created a new quest for Suho. And that was it. Suho raised his eyes and looked at the quest window that appeared before him. Job change quest arrived. Do you accept the job change quest? Gulp. Suho swallowed. The yes or no options were blinking before his eyes. His heart pounded in his chest. How could it not? The job change quest, which he had never even dared to dream of in his life, had finally appeared, and it was the result of his own efforts. Accept. Ding! The moment he decided to accept the quest, a new window unfolded before his eyes. You have accepted the job change quest. Job change quest, the Dragon King's trial. 1. The monarch of destruction, Antares, mocks your weakness. If your current frail body were to receive the Dragon King's power, it would burn to ashes. Meet the minimum qualifications to become the Dragon King's successor. Objective, reach level 99. Level 99. Suho seemed to understand how this standard was set. It was the dream he had when he was a teenager. Back then, he endlessly fought and leveled up against his father's shadow army, including Beru. Thinking about it now, they must have been going easy on me. But at the time, the path was so arduous and filled with fierce battles that he didn't even realize they were holding back. After countless battles, creating mountains of corpses of giants and dragons, he reached the highest level at the end of the long road across the plains. That was the end. No matter how many battles he went through after that, no matter how skillfully he wielded his power, he could never advance to the next stage. As if level 100 didn't exist. So back then, he simply thought that 99 was the end. But what if it wasn't? Suho realized. Could that have been my limit? Ha! A burning competitive spirit surged within him and he grinned. So, let's start with that. Just then, beep! The small lizard that was sitting quietly on his hand made a noise. Ragnar. The newly hatched baby dragon blinked its round eyes with a silly expression and looked at Suho. Ask the Dragon King, he said. Beep! Suho held Ragnar's small body and looked into his eyes. The contract between Sung Jinwoo and Antares set a condition for making Suho the Dragon King's successor, and at the same time a necessary procedure for it. To inherit that power, a priest was naturally needed to carry out the procedure. That's right. If Suho was the Dragon King's successor, Ragnar was the priest. Awaken, Antares. Beep! As soon as Suho finished speaking, a great spirit possessed Ragnar's small body. Whoosh! The spirit of Antares possesses the priest's body. In an instant, Ragnar's eyes, which had been rolling around with a silly expression, deepened. His gaze stared blankly into the void and muttered softly, "An unfamiliar ceiling." He opened his eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling. Thump, 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 thump. the sound of a heart beating violently deep within his small body. He felt the noble dragon blood coursing through his veins, and then, breath in, breath out, the first breath. Fresh air filled his lungs as he expanded his chest and inhaled deeply. Yes, all of this was proof. Ah, I see. Finally, he realized. He was certain that he had truly returned to life. Ha ha! Antares burst into laughter, overjoyed. Ha ha! I'm back! This Dragon King has overcome even death and returned from the sea of the afterlife. Ka! Everyone in the Shadow Dungeon trembled at the Dragon King's energy contained in that crazed laughter. This power, could it be? Sung Ilwan instinctively braced himself to unleash the power of the rift, even if it meant endangering himself. The Dragon King? Even Amit was tense, preparing to control gravity. Rumble, rumble, rumble! Beru, who had fought countless battles against the army of destruction led by the Dragon King long ago, reacted more violently than anyone else. Little monarch, let go of his hand. I will protect you. Antares was extremely satisfied with their reactions. Heh! Yes, tremble in fear before me. Who was he? The first monarch, and the strongest monarch, born from the primordial darkness. The king who reigned over all dragons, the symbol of fear and destruction. Those who knew him called him Dragon King, with utmost respect and reverence. I am the Dragon King, Antares. Everyone except Suho prepared for a decisive battle at Antares' declaration, but the reason they couldn't attack him right away was simple. He was currently being held in Suho's hand. But that was only for a moment. Antares escaped from his grasp and jumped down, and he slowly got up and took his first grand step as a monarch who had overcome death and returned from the sea of the afterlife. Heh. As expected of Kamish's hatchling, this body is quite usable. Antares couldn't hide his satisfaction despite his short legs wobbling. Second life as a dragon. Who else in the world could walk so skillfully right after being born from an egg, except for a great being like himself? The principle was simple. Spread the small wings wide to maintain balance. Use the tail to support the body and prevent falling backward. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Of course, he still lacked strength, so his legs trembled incessantly just from standing. This much is easy with mana. Antares skillfully drew mana from Ragnar's heart, and then started walking with renewed vigor. Ha-ha! Did you see that? How delightful, to live a second life in the body of a newly hatched dragon. Antares shuddered with anticipation. His past self had already reached an insurmountable peak. His power had reached an extreme where further growth was impossible. But with all that experience and talent, he was given the opportunity to grow again, starting as a hatchling. A true second life as a dragon. But then, Gah! Beep! Antares' eyes, which had been gleaming with a murderous aura as he laughed, suddenly turned vacant. Ding! Ragnar's mana is depleted. The spirit of Antares dwelling in the priest's body is leaving. Beep! Beep! Ragnar tilted his head with a clueless expression. Then he flinched, realizing that countless people were surrounding him, emitting tremendous hostility. And like a newborn baby, he burst into tears. Wah! No one spoke. It seemed something incredible had just happened. Suho silently picked up the crying Ragnar and patted his back. Well, he had to soothe the crying baby for now. Pat! Be-woo. Finally, Ragnar closed his eyes and fell asleep, relieved, as everyone breathed a sigh of relief at his needlessly cute appearance. Someone's grievance could be heard from a distant world, directed towards Suho. The Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, is indignant, claiming this is a scam. The Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, is contemplating ways to increase Ragnar's mana. The Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, is thinking about Ragnar's upbringing. Chapter 200, Chapter 199. While Suho was hatching Ragnar and having a squabble with the Dragon Emperor, American society was in a state of shock. Thomas Andre killed Christopher Reed? Oh my God, I guess we finally know who's stronger between the two. But I didn't want it to actually happen like this. The incident of two S-rank hunters representing the United States fighting each other for some reason, resulting in one dying, wasn't simply a murder case. The death of an S-rank hunter was an astronomical loss for the United States. But the bigger problem was that the perpetrator of this shocking crime was also an S-rank hunter. Thomas Andre should be held fully accountable and executed. Hey buddy, We've already lost one S-rank hunter, and you want to kill another? Are you trying to destroy America? No, but do you really think that's possible? Thomas Andre is currently under arrest, but if he has ill intentions, at least half of the U.S. population will die. But didn't Thomas surrender to the Bureau because he admitted his guilt? Surrender? Do you really think that was a surrender? Didn't you see the picture of that crazy tyrant stopping by a burger joint after being arrested? Americans were heatedly debating the issue of Thomas Andre's punishment. But there was one thing they all agreed on. It didn't matter that he was arrested for murder. If they touched him, the United States would never be safe, both economically and physically. Additionally, there was one more aspect that piqued the curiosity of all Americans. So where is the Hunter Bureau holding Thomas Andre right now? Isn't it Area 51, obviously? Yeah, where else could it be? Area 51. Located in the Nevada desert, it was a top-secret military base managed by the U.S. Department of Defense, originally built as a clandestine site for developing and testing new weapons. The U.S. government had remained silent about the questions surrounding this place, but eventually acknowledged its existence when a 355-page classified document from the CIA was released. But what really intrigued people about this secret base was the countless rumors surrounding it. Rumors that they were secretly holding aliens and conducting biological experiments. That they had recovered UFO wreckage and were conducting joint research with aliens. Area 51 was associated with all sorts of strange and mysterious rumors, and with the advent of the Hunter era, Area 51 was incorporated under the Hunter Bureau and utilized in various ways. So people's speculation that it was the only place to hold Thomas Andre was quite convincing. But the reality was quite different from what was suspected. One more glass. Yes, Mr. Thomas, how much ice would you like? Clink. The bartender's eyes, as he placed large ice cubes in the transparent wine glass, subtly glanced at Thomas Andre. Hey, Adam, would you like a drink too? Thank you, but I'm still on duty, so I don't think I can. Adam White, the head of the Hunter Bureau, who had just entered the mansion, smiled bitterly at Thomas, who was already quite drunk and waving at him. That's right, this absurdly luxurious mansion was the prison the Hunter Bureau had specially prepared for this situation. Calling it a prison was generous. It was practically a resort. Thomas Andre, who had been arrested as a criminal, wasn't wearing a prison uniform either. He was dressed in a colorful floral t-shirt and shorts, leisurely enjoying a vacation by the pool. He was also fully aware of Adam White's position, so he grinned and asked him, "What about my punishment? It's the death penalty, right?" Enough with the jokes. Let's talk business. Adam White sighed and had his accompanying secretaries lay out the collected investigation materials before him. Ooh, was it that much? Seeing the amount, Thomas Andre raised an eyebrow, and his eyes gleamed. Yes, as you said, Mr. Thomas. Adam White, the former head of the Hunter Bureau, had immediately launched an investigation into the Outer Gods cult after hearing the reason why he killed Christopher Reed. Public opinion was leaning towards Thomas Andre, who was already infamous for his foul temper, killing Christopher Reed in a fit of rage. But Adam White was relieved to learn that the truth was different. There are far more Outer Gods cult members active across the U.S. than we expected. The Outer Gods cult, an unidentified cult that emerged out of nowhere. Surprisingly, their goals and actions are quite moderate compared to other cults. At most, they're just proselytizing and selling stardust. That's to be expected. Their goal was to remain hidden, after all. So did you recover the stardust and star pieces? Yes, we confiscated everything we could find. There was no legal basis to arrest them, so we bought everything, and we're keeping them under surveillance. Heh, as always, your work is impeccable. Thomas Andre raised his wine glass as if making a toast and drank it all in one gulp. The subordinate staff members beside Adam White couldn't help but feel indignant. They were offended by the way he treated Adam White, the head of the Hunter Bureau, like his underling. But what could they do? Thomas Andre. That man had the qualifications and power to act that way. Even Adam White himself didn't seem to mind his disrespectful attitude. Rather, at a time when an unidentified group was operating in the U.S., Thomas's help was needed more than ever to maintain peace in the country. But it's true, isn't it? that the mana-restricting cuffs don't work on you. Ah, that's right. Thomas Andre shrugged nonchalantly at Adam White's words. Currently, Thomas Andre's wrists and ankles were bound with mana-restricting cuffs designed to restrain villains. Those cuffs were a remarkable invention developed by the Korean Hunter Association and widely used worldwide. But during the arrest, Thomas Andre wore those cuffs, yet mana was still surging from his body. Didn't I tell you? I can absorb the mana of the outer universe, and these mana-restricting cuffs don't work on that. It won't work on Stardust Amplifiers or Outer Gods cult members either. You said the person who shared that information with you was Hunter Sung Suho from Korea? Hey, that's right. He's a very promising young man. Anyone who sees your expression now would think he's your hidden son. Oh, it's similar. He's the son of my longtime best friend. Adam White shook his head at Thomas Andre, who was smiling proudly as he thought of Sung Suho. He was simply dumbfounded. This was the first time he felt so powerless since becoming the head of the Hunter Bureau, which protected the United States. I'm very sorry to say this, but I'm truly anxious. What's happening on Earth right now? It's an interstellar war, I tell you. Sigh. Adam White, who couldn't believe nor disbelieve those absurd words, could only press his forehead and sigh. Seeing Thomas leisurely drinking here after saying such things made him even more frustrated. By the way, did you ask the Korean Association for cooperation? Yes. We heard the chairman is currently in North Korea, so we sent someone there. Good. It has to be the chairman himself. Our Suho said not to trust anyone else. Sung Suho again. Ah, and do you have any spare high-grade magic stones in the Bureau's warehouse? If you do, it would be great if you could send them all to our Suho. He said he needs a lot of magic stones these days. Those are expensive. I'll pay for them. The auction price. Never mind. I'll do that. Hey, lighten up. This is all for Earth, you know. Do you think America will be safe if Earth falls? Ah, if you don't have many high-grade ones, scrape together some mid-grade magic stones. Honestly, wasn't this just extortion? It began with a hamburger, but once they started giving in, he was demanding more and more. The Hunter Bureau staff couldn't hide their frustration at the sight of this supercriminal. And the more brazenly he acted, the more curious they became. Just who was this Korean Hugh, Nunter, Sung Suho, whom Thomas Andre was so blatantly doting on? I guess I'll have to meet him myself. It would be a disaster if Thomas Andre is being deceived by him. Adam White resolved to schedule a visit to Korea soon. Ah, and to our Suho. Please stop. Meanwhile, after the missing Sung Il-hwan returned home safely, Park Kyung-hae and Sung Jina, who had been worried about him, finally calmed down. Of course, that didn't mean all the problems were solved. Sung Jinwoo and Cha Hae-in, their precious family members, were still missing, and their worries couldn't help but grow even more after this incident. But the solution was actually quite simple. Suho used the key to the shadow dungeon on them without hesitation. These memories? Park Kyung-hae and Sung Jina, who suddenly regained all their memories from their past lives, were temporarily in shock, but soon accepted the truth. Suho honestly told them everything about Sung Jinwoo and Cha Hae-in's whereabouts. Of course, that didn't erase all their worries, but at least it prevented them from having vague and endless anxieties like before. Little Monarch, are you sure this is all right? Beru looked a bit concerned as he watched Suho's actions. If you restore people's memories indiscriminately like this, it could cause chaos in the world. Of course, Sung Jinwoo didn't give any specific instructions on how to use the key to the shadow dungeon when he handed it over to Suho. He only advised that it would be good to restore Yoo Jin-ho's memories, as he could provide the most practical help to Suho, but the rest was entirely up to his discretion. Even so, if he restored everyone's memories indiscriminately, some might use this knowledge for evil deeds, and above all, some might be exploited by Itarim. But Suho confidently dismissed Beru's concerns. So what if it's indiscriminate? I can't let my family worry about my father's life and death, can I? Besides, Suho looked at Beru with a serious gaze. His eyes were burning hotter than ever. I don't like the fact that people in this world have forgotten all about my father. If I could, I'd make everyone in the world remember him again, but I'm holding back. Beru couldn't say anything, feeling Suho's sincerity. As he said, people in this world had completely forgotten that Sung Jinwoo saved Earth long ago. Suho's wish was that everyone would at least remember his father's noble and selfless sacrifice, even if they couldn't all be grateful. While speaking, he was recalling his recent battle against the Dragon Emperor. I've always been curious since I was young, how my father got that burned scar on his hand. Suho had vaguely realized the greatness of his father, who fought a war alone against the terrifyingly dangerous Dragon Emperor and emerged victorious. That's why he made up his mind. Therefore, I'll continue to make as many people as possible remember my father whenever I get the chance. He realized. No matter how I think about it, that's the only gift I can prepare before going to see him. Beru was crying. That's right, a gift. The single word Suho had muttered to himself when he first encountered Itarim's apostle. Beru, who had walked alongside Sung Jinwoo for a long time, was deeply moved by Suho's sincerity. He had been thinking about what he could do for his father since then. Hot tears streamed down the shadow ant's face. Endlessly.